Alright, just making sure that that is actually going. Looks like it is. Let's have some monkeys, eh? Let's monkey around a little bit. I am not gonna lie to you guys. I'm feeling really pissed off today. I feel like exceptionally pissed off today. I woke up pissed off, and it's just never worn off. I've been feeling pissed off all day, and everything I've done and everything I do is just like, boy, do I feel fucking pissed off. Like, inexplicably, unexplainably. You know what? I'm gonna play Black Hole Sun. That's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. Let's get this party started. Hey Ruth. Hey POC, how you guys doing? Picking your number early, eh bud? In my eyes, indisposed, in disguises no one knows, hides the face, lies the snake, the sun in my disgrace. Boiling heat, summer stench, neath the black, the sky looks dead. Call my name through the cream, and I'll hear you scream again. Black old sun, won't you come and wash away the rain? Black old sun, won't you come, won't you come, won't you come? Stuttering, cold and damp, steal the warm wind, tired friend. Times are gone for honest men, and sometimes far too long for snakes. In my shoes, a walk in sleep, and in my youth I pray to keep heaven sent hell away, and no one sings like you anymore. Black old sun, won't you come, wash away the rain? Black old sun, won't you come, won't you come, won't you come? Black old sun, won't you come and wash away the rain? Black old sun, won't you come, won't you come, won't you come, won't you come? Man, Chris Cornell, Soundgarden, man, they hit something there. They tapped in. They tapped into a frequency, man. They tapped into a frequency without a doubt. Like, it's interesting because, like, the rest of Soundgarden's, like, portfolio it's like Spoonman is good, and oh, they've got another one that I'm completely blanking on that is also, like, pretty good, but Black Hole Sun is just like they tapped into the core. Hey Andrea, the lungs on you. Yeah, that's my favorite, man. When people figure, like, they come in here and they listen to me talk and they're like, oh, this guy's got some opinions and some perspectives I don't hear elsewhere. I love it. But it's when I sing that people are suddenly like, oh shit, there's like there's another layer. That's right. I'm like a delicious layer cake. Just keep pulling the layers, and there's another thing underneath. You wait. All right, guys. You guys seem real eager to get into the number pick. So let's do the number pick here. First of all, let's say farewell to the hilarious monkeys, right? Hilarious monkeys, right? Maybe lift your mood a little bit. Who knows? Just living life. Sometimes I look at my little pug and I think, like, man, that's the fucking life, right? Like, his big concern is, will I get peanut butter today? Oh, man. Okay, farewell monkeys, farewell black hole sun. Let's do it, guys. Pick a number between 1 and 10. So we got a 10, we got a 4, we got a 3, we got a 7, we got a 5. I am going to go with a 6. I'm feeling a 6 today.
Here we go for today's number.
Let's go.
It's October 14, 2021. 10 balls.
Here we go.
Each ball has a number. Numbers 1 through 10. Swirl the numbers.
Absolutely my favorite part of this whole thing. I think I like the swirl
Pick
the numbers
a
line
number.
more than I like the actual picking of the number. Here we go.
Today's number is
8.
8.
Threaded the needle. Look at that. We had a 10, a 7, a 5, a 3, a 4, and a 6 right through the middle. Isn't that the way? That's just indicative of how this day has been going for me, you guys. That's completely indicative of how this day has been going for me. Everything I've tried to do today has gone wrong, and it's been exactly in that manner. That just like right down, like just like I've got like everything covered, and all I've got is like this little tiny like thing right in the middle. It just goes right in between every single time. Like that, like friggin' that's how Darth Vader must have felt like when the Death Star went up. He must have just been like, really? Like with like a little port? Oh my god. So, congratulations. We're all fucking losers today. I'm not even going to try to salvage it. We're all losers today, let's say. You know what, Ruth? 4 times 2. If there were 2 people, let's see. Can we make this happen? What's 7 plus 3, 20, 5, 4, and then there was... fuck it. The numbers are the friends we made along the way to communism. There you go, Bumbleguppy. Always finding the way to lighten everything up. Yeah, war with China, thinking through the unthinkable. Yeah, we've got a great AP article that came out. Or, sorry, not an article. The Genocide That Vanished. The U.S. is downplaying Xinjiang for now, by Tom Foudy. Right? This is from Chinese television, so people are not Chinese television. What's the CGTN? It's a news station from China. So everybody in the world is just, except China, is going to be like, oh well, of course they're saying this. But Tom Foudy is a British political and international relations analyst with a graduate of Durham and Oxford universities. He writes on topics pertaining to China, the DPRK, Britain, and the U.S. The article reflects the author's opinions, not necessarily the view of CGTN. Towards the end of 2020 and for the first few months of 2021, the United States relentlessly accused China of committing genocide against the Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities in Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. The claims were given wall-to-wall coverage, and on his last day of office, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo made the formal designation which purported this: boxing the Biden administration into accepting the designation accordingly, who, in setting the stage, embraced it and also pushed the charge that China was committing forced labor against these ethnic groups, utilizing it to attack China's cotton and tomato production, as well as solar panel industries. Then suddenly it all vanished. As of October 2021, and particularly so since the Afghanistan withdrawal, the Biden administration has quietly downsized their attacks on China over Xinjiang and shifted focus as they have consolidated their own China strategy, which has involved moving their priorities towards Taiwan, the Indo-Pacific, and deals such as AUKUS, while also opening the doors to trade talks with the Chinese government. The congressional bill to ban all imports from Xinjiang has also vanished. In conjunction with this, the relentless mainstream media coverage of Xinjiang has quieted too, with observers surprised today to see a feature appear in the Associated Press, which seems to be toning down allegations, claiming Xinjiang eases its grips, but fear remains. Genocide is the most egregious, immoral, and serious crime possible under international law. For something seemingly as serious and damning as the events the media claimed were happening in Xinjiang, It is highly suspicious for those who advocated it to suddenly brush it under the carpet. Although it could be resuscitated as they see fit, the downplaying of these allegations in line with shifting U.S. foreign policy goals is damning evidence that it was weaponized as a bad faith initiative in order to manufacture consent for tough policies against China, a process conceived and pushed by the previous administration to manipulate the public. Now it's served its purpose, it's been shelved. The United States frequently weaponizes rhetoric of human rights for political gain, a process which the mainstream media pushes in tandem with the Western public, and the Western public falls for it every time. It is a means to an end, as opposed to an end in itself, and there are numerous examples as to how the U.S. State Department utilizes a myriad network of think tanks, scholars, and media organizations to manufacture consent for its policies, only to turn them off like a switch when they are no longer needed. When the Trump administration confronted the DPRK in 2017, it gave publicly to defectors and frequently condemned it on the matter of human rights. As soon as Trump met Kim Jong-un, the critical coverage disappeared and these people were never heard of again. In line with this, the U.S. used Xinjiang for a number of policy ends. Firstly, to discredit leading Chinese technology firms such as Huawei and Hikvision by accusing them of links to human rights abuses to justify their entity listing. Secondly, to promote extreme hostility towards China in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic to bolster Trump's election and reset U.S. foreign policy goals towards the country altogether. Then thirdly, within the first few months of the Biden administration, to meet U.S. protectionist goals by using accusations of forced labor to consolidate Biden's solar panel agenda, as well as to marshal allies into siding with him on China and set the stage for his presidency. Since that time, Biden has seemingly made a strategic choice not to weaponize Xinjiang for the time being, having got what he wanted from it. Organizations and individuals who are also notorious for building this narrative, such as the Australian Strategic Policy Institute and Adrian Zenz, to name a few, no longer receive wall-to-wall coverage as they were getting on the matter. The decision occurred sometime in the summer, with him slowly downplaying other extreme Trump-era anti-China initiatives as well, such as the COVID-19 lab leak conspiracy theory. Instead, his new China strategy has colluded around militarizing the Indo-Pacific, pushing the Taiwan issue, wanting to compete with the Belt and Road Initiative, and also seeking trade talks under the mantra of being tough. This should be a warning, if not a clear demonstration, that the U.S. is wielding the issue in bad faith. It is a switch which they turn on and off in accordance with policy preferences. What we are left with is an effective demonstration that the U.S., framing themselves as defenders of liberty and human rights, accused a country of committing genocide and then otherwise decided they weren't doing that anymore. At least not for now. Everyone who is labeled a genocide denier by pious journalists and analysts who are zealously pushing this opportunistic narrative deserves an apology. I await the apologies in my inbox. I'm sure that they will be flooding in any moment now. All of these people, yeah. Bad faith, the U.S. shocked Pikachu, exactly. Well, and the thing is that he hits on it here, which is exactly the truth, that the Uyghur genocide lie has already worked, right? The people who want to believe that will believe it, and they will not be convinced otherwise, right? They simply won't. That the Western media is not going to suddenly say like, oopsie, that's not a thing. Like the best we're getting is like an article from the Associated Press, which if you go and find the article, basically just pretends as though there was a genocide, but now it's over, right? Like, and I've talked about this before, so I won't get too large into it. But like, you know, the anti-mask folks in the mega crowd, right? Like, there's a Uyghur genocide as far as they're concerned. Like, these guys don't really read in the first place, so you could just bombard them with enormous amounts of propaganda, and that's good enough, right? They don't need evidence. I mean, for Christ's sakes, you think Trump voters care about evidence? Like, the only thing at this point that I think will be the nail in the coffin, and it is coming, I'll be very surprised if it doesn't occur, will be the UN releasing an official document. Just as they sent a delegation to Venezuela, and they came out with a document that said, hey, it's the U.S. sanctions that are causing this problem. The UN will come out with a similar document for China and just be like, look, China was in the midst of like a refugee crisis and in the middle of like a CIA-funded terrorist war that they were dealing with. And the U.S. is using that situation to lie about a genocide, right? Like that's what the UN is going to come out with. But until they do, we got to sit here with this stupid fucking story until finally we can just be like, and then it'll be the same thing as the WMD lie, right? But the reality is that the people in power don't care if they get caught in this lie. Like that's the thing. Like, do you think George W. Bush and Cheney and all those guys care that the lie got found out? Oh, WMD's total lie. They still went to war. They got everything they wanted out of it. There was no punishment whatsoever. And it'll be the same thing here, right? There'll be no punishment for it whatsoever. And the people who support going in and fucking with China, right? It doesn't matter to them, right? It's just convenience. And I almost guarantee that, like, people will still say, once this UN thing comes out, they will outright say, like, oh, the UN, they're just bought by China, right? Like, that's the shit that they're gonna say. Oh, I know, buddy, I know. You got more peanut butter in here. And I'm not being a good owner, right? You're looking at me being like, Jonathan, I'm so hungry for peanut butter. Jonathan cares not for me any longer. Yeah, our Western critiques stop the genocide, exactly. Like, that's the kind of dumb colonial white shit that they'll say, right? That's the kind of dumb shit that they'll actually say. So it's good to know that articles like this are being written by, like, you know, actual journalists, but yeah, no WMDs in Iraq. Does that mean we win? Yeah, exactly. No, but the good news coming out of this, if you ask me, the good news is that it does look like so we've got this Rand, like, war with China, thinking through the unthinkable. It looks like this, while it is a plan, it looks like the Biden administration, at least, is not moving forward with this plan. Because there's a flaw in the reasoning, right? There's a flaw in the reasoning. The entire plan is based on the idea that China will not escalate to nuclear bombardment, that they won't start using nuclear bombs, right? Which is a hilarious thing to think. Like, China is so evil that we must go to war with them, but not evil enough to use nuclear bombs, right? That's essentially what this document says. It says straight out, like, everything that we are doing is based on the idea that China will not use nuclear bombs and keep the war conventional, right? So China is evil and must be stopped, but not evil enough to actually use nuclear bombs. Like, right? So, and I mean, that's a pretty big gamble, if you ask me. Like, that's a pretty big gamble. If I'm the president of the United States, if I'm the guy that's pulling the trigger on that war, right? Like, that's a huge gamble you're taking, that China is not going to immediately just start fucking dropping nukes. Like, would you be willing to take that gamble? I don't think so. I think most people would not take that gamble, right? But the idea that the Americans are even drawing these documents up in the first place is really, really vicious. Really, really vicious. So, you guys know me, I'm going to keep my finger on the pulse of this one. But an interesting thing is happening, right? Because of articles like this, and especially because of the Associated Press article, is that the tankies, right? The tankies themselves are basically doing a victory lap now, right? You can go see in the communist circles and, like, the communist subreddits and all this kind of stuff. Even the ones that usually don't let memes and, like, that kind of thing happen are really waving a victory flag over this. That, like, they were right. Right? That the conclusion of this article is actually true. That, like, all of the people who were labeled genocide denier, right? Like, they do deserve an apology. Never going to happen, right? Nobody apologized for the WMD shit. Like, nobody apologized for the false testimony given against Iran in the UN. Like, nobody apologizes for this shit. But what it means to me is that, like, I was right. I was right from the outset. If you go back through my history, right, you find the first fucking video. I saw that what they were doing against Xinjiang, and I called bullshit from day one. I called bullshit from day one. I never gave it any credibility. I never backed up on it. So I was fucking right. That feels good. Feels good to know that like my instincts on this were correct. Don't you wish we actually had a media? Like, don't you wish we actually had like a real media that actually did real journalism and like did real work, right? Don't you wish that, especially like I'm here in Canada and I'm like, boy, do I ever wish that here in Canada, like the US starts disseminating propaganda, the US starts spitting out their bullshit. I wish that like the CBC would be a great example, right? Or like anybody would just be like, okay, well, let's take a look at your bullshit. Oh, okay, it's another CIA operation because that guy is funded by the CIA. Like, if I can figure this out, they can figure this out. Like, it's really, it wasn't hard to do, right? It wasn't hard to do. Who is Adrian Zenz? Let's look into Adrian Zenz. Oh, Adrian Zenz is a CIA asset and is also, insane. Okay, let's maybe publish that. Let's actually maybe talk about who Adrian Zenz is. Oh, okay. Oh, there's the World Uyghur Congress. Okay. Who funds that? Oh, the CIA. Oh, like these are easy things to find out. It wasn't difficult, right? That's the embarrassing part about all of this. That's the most embarrassing part about all of this, if you ask me. All of the information was not difficult to find. It was actually quite easy to find. And the idea that like the billionaire funded like National Post or the Globe and Mail or Global News or any of these organizations couldn't figure this out is a joke. It's a total fucking joke. And it's just like all it shows you is that your media will never ever have your back. Like it will never ever 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 have your back ever. And in fact, if it's talking, if something is coming out of the mouth of the media, you should take the alternative position instantly, like instantaneously. Like you should give them no credence, no credibility, nothing. You should read the article, find the source, and if the source is something like the Fraser Institute, right, you should immediately discard that and assume that it's full of shit, right? Like. And to do anything else is madness at this point. To do anything else is complete and total madness. Edward Snowden's mistake was assuming the American people would care about what he disclosed to them. Yeah, I think they do. They just don't, like, people don't know what to do, right? They don't know what to actually do. And right now, like, tying this into the media that we're talking about, right? I lost my fucking train of thought. What am I? See, this is the kind of fucking day I'm having. The people are so set. Like, oh yes, take a look at the Capitol strike that's going on now, and it is a Capitol strike, right? People are quitting their jobs in enormous numbers. People are refusing to work for shit pay. People are they're walking off the job, and how's it being reported? Labor shortage, right? It's a labor shortage. It's not a capital strike. Because if they actually reported it for what it was, which is a capital strike, people might actually start to realize, oh shit, there's actually something that I can do. Oh shit, if I actually got organized to declare this like an official strike, if there was actually a face to this, right? Like the idea that we are doing anything other than revolting, right? It's a rebellion what we're experiencing right now, right? And it has nothing to do, especially in the United States. It has nothing to do with government handouts. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? What government handouts? Well, you mean the $1,200 that people got once? Like, shut the fuck up. Like, that's an embarrassment. The media outlets that are reporting that it's like government handouts that are causing this to happen instead of like the mass abuse and the realization by the populace that this is a wage slave system, right? I've never seen any media apparatus actually say like, hey, have you guys noticed how this is a wage slave system? It completely is. It's indefensible at this stage in the game. And you're starting to see it manifest itself in hysteria. Like the hysteria that's starting to come out of the capitalist death cult at this point is getting more and more obvious because they understand that they're losing credibility. They understand, like, how could you not? How could you not? Imagine seeing some guy like me, right? Or like Jimmy Dore. Like Jimmy Dore is the case in point. Like imagine seeing a guy like Jimmy Dore, whose entire fucking career is just shitting on the media, basically. Just shitting all over the media the whole time. And he's got like 1 million subscribers. He tours all around America, right? Like sowing the seeds of discontent. And if you're looking at a guy like Jimmy Dore, you really got to think to yourself, like, holy fuck, we are fucking up. Like this is a huge fuck up. The fact that a guy like Jimmy Dore exists at all is a massive, massive, massive indictment of the media system. And the media system is beginning to get hysterical about it. They don't know what to do about it. They don't know what's happening, and so all they're attempting to do now is suppression, right? Like people like Aaron Matei, people like Max Blumenthal, people like Jimmy Dore, people like myself. We're gonna get shadow banned, right? We're gonna get shunted in the corner. We're gonna get deprioritized. People like Chris Hedges, right? We're gonna get shunted away. They're not gonna recommend that stuff. We're gonna stay on the fringes, right? Because they don't dare actually ban. They don't dare actually ban because they'll have no credibility then, right? That Noam Chomsky actually said talked about this, where people ask, well, why don't they just ban them? It's like, well, if you ban them, then you martyr them, and that actually is going to increase their profile. Yeah, for sure, I've been shadow banned. I can see it in the amount of growth the channel has. I'm growing anyway. I'm growing in spite of it, right? Because I spread it around, and other people in the channel spread it down. Bless your hearts for sharing it on Twitter or sharing it around, guys. Like anytime anybody's sharing this stuff, you're doing me a real true favor, like really, really a truthful favor. And but like for sure, I've been shadow banned. I can see it by the numbers, right? I know the month I was shadow banned. I think I was shadow banned in June. Do I like RT? Yeah, RT does good. There are good people working in RT. I understand it's Russian television, so it has that angle to it. But like Abby Martin is on RT. What's his name? Sanchez, right? There's a guy named. Is his name actually Rick Sanchez? That's hilarious if it is. Anyway, and Chris Hedges. Chris Hedges' show is on RT, right? Like. Abby Martin, what a babe, eh? So jealous of her Iraq war vet husband. But just fucking. Yeah. I predicted in 2015 that Americans will never tolerate censorship on the internet. Instead, the internet will simply be made unusable, and it's mostly been true. Paid trolls, new features, etc. Yeah, that is how it's going to go. Like I remember the early days of the internet. It was the Wild West. Anybody could put anything up and do anything, right? That was like the glory days of the internet. And we mainly used it for like stupid cat videos and shit. Like I Can Has Cheeseburger and all that. Oh, dude, don't start that up, okay? Don't start that up. I don't have any cheese, bud. I don't have anything for you. Okay, sorry guys. My little guy got caught in the snorties.
Residents in Nunavut's capital flocked to a nearby river for clean water. More than 7,000 people in Iqaluit have been without clean tap water for 2 days now. The city declaring a state of emergency, looking for help from Ottawa and the territory. Water bottles flying off the shelves at local stores, who are charging as much as $14 for 3.5 liters. The emergency declared after residents and officials found evidence of fuel contamination, some describing a strong diesel smell. Residents have flocked to a nearby river to fill their drinking, bathing, and washing needs, but officials stress the need to boil the water for at least a minute before use. The city has since made clean water available at a local hockey rink. They expect sample results in the coming days. In Ottawa, Nigel Newlove, City News.
What these guys are eventually going to do, this is what these guys, and I shouldn't say eventually do, because they actually have done it already, right? Is that they're going to create a an outrage culture, right? Like they're going to create, like Keith Olbermann was exactly this, where he was just like making these big statements of indictment, but it didn't lead to anything, and it doesn't do anything, right? Tucker Carlson is very much like that, right? And what the media is learning from the internet and from the people who are on the internet is to galvanize the outrage, right? I miss the BitTorrents. BitTorrents are still around Nova Scotia. BitTorrent's still around. Yeah, you're never going to kill those. That's really the system of BitTorrenting is well established and extremely difficult to root out. They'll never to the point where they'll never do it. It'll never get rooted out at this point. Like, to root out the BitTorrent system that's in place, they would have to make a multinational corporate trade negotiation across like 15, 16 different countries. It'll just never happen. It'll just never happen. Yeah, not that I would know anything about whatsoever. Exactly, I'm with you, Onward. That's just what I've heard, right? Don't look up the Pirate Bay proxy. Don't look up views. Don't look up any of that. That doesn't exist. None of that exists, right? Just make sure you pay like $50 a month for like Crave, Hulu, all that shit, right? Make sure you do all that, right? I get attacked when I use it. Like, yeah. Like, you're gonna use a VPN, right? If you care, or get a virus scanner like Norton or something. Anyway. I'm just so pissed off about this. Like, I'm just so fucking pissed off about like how much cooler the internet could actually be. The internet could be so much cooler than this. Like, it could be so much cooler. Like, we have this like mass information thing, and it's being totally fucking kiboshed and overridden by billionaires and like the CIA. Like, it's oh, and like Comcast. Hey, Grinning, how you doing, bud? But like, Comcast is such a fucking, like, what a monopoly these guys have. Like, Comcast is a fucking monopoly. The South Park guys nailed Comcast completely, where they were like listening to their complaints while like rubbing their nipples and shit. It's like, yeah, like, what's going on in our communications network, period, like, forget about the nature of the internet and like how it's going and all that kind of stuff, but literally down to like the bare bones of who owns what. Like, it's obscene. It's grotesque. Like, the idea that we live in some kind of capitalist system or some kind of capitalist model is totally shown as completely fraudulent, based exclusively on what's happening in our communications network. Yeah, I barely afford my Comcast, let alone a VPN. Yeah. Like, it's just like, it's just gotten, I mean, you guys know me, right? Like, we should nationalize all this shit. We should get rid of these fucking middlemen, because that's all they are. They're just worthless middlemen. And just mandate that shit gets better, right? But that's never going to be the case. I actually saw this really great, I listened to this really great lecture that was given by Kwame Ture in 1979. And I was shocked to discover that essentially the way that guy talks is essentially how I talk. And he was saying, all right, like, things are going to get worse. He knew in 1979 that things were going to get worse. And they have gotten worse. Like, everything has gotten worse. And now it's deeply unfortunate to say, but I feel like I have picked up the baton to say that things are going to keep getting worse. Like, I don't see the necessary action by the populace to do anything about this. Like, it just seems like the populace has been stunned. Like, they're just like a deer in the headlights, and they don't know which way to go, and they're just gonna let the car hit them. Like, $85 a month for your connection? That's fucking outrageous, bud. That's outrageous. $85 a month? This is what I'm talking about, man. Like, these guys need to get totally fucked. They need to get totally fucked. Even $65 is bullshit. Like, I am of the opinion that we could produce this service for $20 a month. There's like literally no reason why we couldn't. And we are to a point now where it's just outright rapacious greed. I left Comcast to have a bandwidth cap, which is ridiculous. A bandwidth cap? Are you kidding me? Like, yeah, like, that's fucking embarrassing. Like you can walk into a McDonald's and get unlimited internet forever. Like and this is my feeling. Like the internet should just be available everywhere. It literally should be a thing that you just like tap into, and there it is, right? That it's just ubiquitous and around and all of that. But it's these worthless middlemen that are just getting in the way of everything, right? And it's getting worse and worse and worse. And you are starting to see, like, the powerful are starting to get worried about this. Like, this is something that I think is becoming, like, really, really clear, is that the powerful are no longer playing this game of, like, well, we can just move over here, move over there. Like, these guys are starting to get very, very seriously concerned about legitimate revolutionary movements within their societies. Like, it's getting more and more clear that they see like 10 years down the road or 5 years down the road, and they're seeing these like 16-year-olds who are basically saying, yeah, let's burn this whole thing down, arrest these guys and hang them, right? Like when people are talking about that guillotine stuff, right? When people are talking about let's get the guillotines out or any of that kind of stuff, like the powerful are looking at that being like, hey, DM, how you doing, bud? How you doing? I don't think I've seen you here in a long time, but I was thinking about you the other day. I hope you're doing well. Yeah, capitalism is about inserting as many middlemen as possible between people and their needs. And that's the capitalist efficiency that they're talking about, right? Because the efficiency in capitalism is not how to provide the service in the best possible way. It's about how to make as much money as possible. Right? And the way to efficiently make as much money as possible is to enslave people, pay them nothing, provide the worst possible service and charge the most amount for it, and make it so people can't go somewhere else because you've monopolized the service. That's called capitalist efficiency, right? And it's getting obvious. It's just getting fucking obvious. Yeah, no ISP competition in my area, $85 is the only deal. That should be a crime. Like, the people that are doing that should be rounded up like snake oil salesmen and put on trial and then hung. Like, period. Like, it's embarrassing to me that there isn't, like, at the very bare minimum, a government offer, right? Like, the idea that the government has not actually created an alternative, right, to compete. And what's so funny is that when the government does this, all the pro-capitalists go, well, if the government does it, we can't compete. As if we're supposed to go, oh, no, the capitalists can't compete. Oh, that's so unfair. Instead of saying, oh, wait, they can create a superior model that you can't compete against. Great. So you're just admitting that capitalism is an inferior model, right? Like, that's what I say to these guys now. And they don't have a response. They just kind of go, oh, shuffle their feet away. Or maybe they'll be like, well, that's communism, which that's basically like, the second they say that's communism, the conversation's over. Like, the conversation's over. You know you're talking to, like, the bottom of the barrel, like, reefer madness. Like, I think the CIA is a trustworthy institution kind of people. Like, you got, like, such a long road to go to get to the point where you can actually see, like, oh, maybe there are liars who lie, right? Like, it's stunning to me that, like, the capitalist position is, I do not trust institutions that I can vote for and actually have a say in, but I will implicitly trust organizations that I can do nothing about. Venezuela! Yeah, exactly. Like, just, look at Venezuela! Right? And then it doesn't matter if you produce the document. It doesn't matter, right? Like, they're already sitting there being like, oh, right? Like, and I was thinking about just this the other day, man. Like, our educational facilities are a fraud. Like, the university system, in my view, has become completely fraudulent. Like, this idea that the Uyghur genocide, well, the University of Toronto, Ryerson University, all of these universities, the first thing they should have done is been like, well, let's get involved in this and actually see if there's any credibility to these allegations, right? What's a university system for, right? If not to do this. And instead of doing that, they just thumb up the bum, right? They don't give a fuck because they're not educational facilities anymore. I know professors. I know assistant professors. You know what these guys are doing? They're fundraising. That's what they're doing. They're not teaching or learning or educating anybody. They're just fucking fundraisers. That's what they do. That's their job. Because the institution, the university institution, now exists exclusively as a capitalist model, which is why it's plunged everybody into debt for nothing, right? Because it's not educating anybody, right? It's not teaching anything, right? It's certainly not investigating claims given by like the CIA or the media or anything like this, right? And the shit that comes out of these places, you can tell is just fabricated nonsense on behalf of corporate power, right? Like the University of British Columbia released a paper to downplay the importance of a basic income, and it was so incredulously embarrassing that no one even cites it. Even the National Post doesn't cite it because it's so embarrassing. Because it was obviously like the oil industry just being like, here, talk some shit about the basic income. And like, and it was so fucking embarrassing, no one even uses it. And it really is getting to the point. And you know that all of this is true because why else would my channel be growing? Why else would I keep growing? Right? Like if I was just some wacky lunatic off on the side talking the way that I talk and everything was actually kind of okay, right? People would ignore me. People would ignore me. But you can't ignore me anymore because I'm fucking right. Because this whole place is illegitimate. There isn't a single credible institution. I am yet to have anybody even challenge me on this, by the way. I stand up in front of people and I say, this country has not one single credible institution, and no one even challenges me on it. Like literally, people, even people who disagree with me generally kind of just like get quiet and shuffle their feet, right? Because they know, because everybody knows. You've got education systems that don't educate anybody. You've got banking systems that exist to just bankrupt people. You've got corporate services that don't provide the service. Like, you've got hospital systems that just bankrupt the poor and ignore people and make them sick. Like, nothing works. Nothing actually fucking works. Yeah, Professor Wolf mentions that he heard of Marx once going to all the universities he went to, and even worse than that, right? Here's a man who got a PhD. Here's a guy who got a PhD in economics, and none of the institutions made him read Marx, right? Think about how fucking stupid that is. That would be like me, who has a degree in theater, right? I went to university, I studied theater. That would be like going to get the degree in theater and never reading Shakespeare. That's what that would be like. Just literally never read Shakespeare. Shakespeare doesn't exist in the theatrical tradition whatsoever. Ignore it. Like, brutal. Fucking brutal. Like, and even if Kwame Ture actually brought up a really interesting point, right? Which is like, well, let's say that you think communism is evil, right? Let's say that you think communism is the great evil. Well, wouldn't you want to know something about it, right? Wouldn't you want to know something about it if it was so evil? Like if you were going out in the wilderness and people were saying, hey, there's poisonous snakes out there, wouldn't you want to know what that snake looked like? Wouldn't you want to know what a snake looked like, and particularly that snake? But imagine saying, oh, there's poisonous snakes, but I don't need to know what it looks like. This is essentially what people do. They don't know anything about communism, and they don't care to know anything about communism, which is like saying, I don't want to know what a snake looks like. It's embarrassing. But this is our educational facilities. This is outright what we do as a people. All we do is say that they're evil, and then we don't actually show anybody what they say. Like, brutal. And we wonder why these capitalists have like they've lost all credibility, right? Yeah, Kwame Ture is very good, very, very, very good. I highly recommend. He seems to be getting there's a resurgence happening with him on YouTube. I think people are starting to put up more of his content. People are starting to put up more of his stuff because I think people need to, and I think it's important that that's happening because I think people need to understand how long this has been going on. Right? People need to understand how long the struggle actually is. Like, this is a multi-generational, like, we're passing the baton between generations, That's what we're doing. We're resurrecting these ideas, to use Christian language about it, right? To learn about communism means admitting that you live in capitalism, which would be really bad for capitalism, yeah? Indoctrination is a shortcut to social cohesion, yeah? I mean, but it's self-destructive. Like, it's so self-destructive. Like, yeah, achoo. That was more like a, here comes another one. Oh, you good, buddy? You good? Yeah, his dumb little face. His dumb little face. And he actually does pretty well, actually. I've seen some pugs who are just, like, suffering through it, dude. They're just suffering through it. Like, so bad that I'm just kind of like, why are you alive? Why are you alive? Tipping point. Pandemic forced restaurant and bar workers into better paying jobs. Like, if you don't like your job, just get a better paying job. Oh, they got better paying jobs. Like, I don't know. I'm so fucking done with this goddamn stupid culture. Like, we live in just a goddamn stupid ass, fucking stupid, dumbass, goddamn poopy shit, fuck, bullshit culture. It's not a culture. It's not a culture. It's just a pretend, like, it's not attempting to analyze itself. It's not attempting to learn anything about itself. It's not attempting to make any kind of statement about itself. All it's doing is releasing just, like, garbage, right? This like Marvel MCU bullshit. Yeah, tell us how you really feel, John. You know what, dude? I'm in the mood for it today. I just woke up today, and I cannot believe that anyone is even attempting to defend this system. And I cannot even believe that we are not just getting into the streets. Like yesterday, I was at that protest yesterday. And the people who are coming to those protests to be the protesters are like broken, disabled people. There are people like limping their way into the streets, right? Like people in wheelchairs. It's just like the abandonment is palpable. The abandonment is palpable and visible, and we just don't care. We just don't care. Like, literally step over the homeless, keep on going. And we pay more for this. And we just don't care. We just don't care. Like, it's staggering. It's stunning. We should pitch in for a billboard that says, "Stop simping for capitalism," right by the 401 in Toronto. Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel we should just block the 401. Like, we should just block it. Eventually, it's going to come to that point. Like, this is the one thing that the capitalists don't really anticipate or think about, which is that the people they're abandoning aren't going to die quietly, right? Like, these disabled people are not going to die quietly, right? And if you threaten them and say, "Hey, we're going to arrest you and throw you in prison," they're just going to be like, "So? Like, you think my life is not a prison already? Like, you think, like, I'm bound to a fucking wheelchair? Like, you think that, like, oh no, you've put me in a prison cell, oh no," right? It is like that Marxian statement, like, all you have to lose are your chains. And, like, people are getting fucking tired and fed up, and even more than tired and fed up, there are people who know that they are going to die soon. There are people who understand that they are soon to be dead. They know and they understand that is what is going to happen, and they are not going out quietly. They're not going out quietly. And so when people start to clog the 401, when people start to do this shit, the capitalists aren't going to have anything to say to them. Like, they're not going to know how to respond to this. They're going to imprison them, and they'll be like, "Yeah, we expected that." Like, it's the absolute shitstorm that this capitalist system is creating for itself is obvious. Like, it's obvious. And the idea that we're all just going to the pandemic's going to lift and we're all going to shrug and just, like, go back to work for these psychopaths who are actively attempting to destroy us, as our media is attempting to funnel us into, by the way. Like, that's the whole it's like a labor shortage. Like, they're saying labor shortage to try to entice people into work, right? "Oh, hey guys, there's a labor shortage." Yeah, it's certainly not a capital strike, right? We're going to pretend like we're welcoming you back. Get fucked. People don't understand what wealth inequality means. I'm servicing one of my client locations and they have $10,000 shower faucet. Get fucked. Get fucked. A $10,000 shower faucet? Like, fuck that. Like, fuck that. Fuck that. I can't even believe that. Like, that's so fucking embarrassing. Like, that should be criminal. Like, wealth hoarding should be considered a crime right off the hop. It just should be considered a crime. Straight up. The whole world is complete BS. Something needs to happen soon. Yeah, well, and something will happen one way or the other, right? One way or the other. With a Photoshop image of Zuckerberg licking Bezos' boots. Yeah, those guys just jerk each other off. My nightmare is a steadily adaptable but increasingly worse new normals. I just don't know if that's going to happen, right? Like, that's the point of the capitalist system. Like, if it was up to the capitalists, they would just make this place hell, right? They would just be the demons and the devils running hell. But, like, we know there's a lot of us. And we know it's getting intolerable, right? We know that it's getting, like nobody's tolerating this bullshit anymore. Like, we're not tolerating this bullshit. I work in an establishment. It's technically a capitalist establishment. But I do believe that if the owner only did that because that's how things were done, he's actually quite nice. But if people start giving us shit, we just give them shit back. We know we're not going to get fired or punished or anything like that, right? Like, it's not a fucking Walmart. I don't work at a fucking really a capitalist establishment, and people are just getting less and less. Like, we're not going to tolerate this shit. Like, the anti-mask types that I'm seeing in the United States, where they're like trying to force their way into places and throwing little hissy fits. Are you kidding me? Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, these little fucking babies. Like, I'm not gonna get paid minimum wage for that. Do you honestly know what I would do if someone was like throwing a hissy fit and going in? I'd just watch them go. And if somebody came to me and said, "You got to prevent that," I'd literally be like, "No." And then if they said, "Well, then I'm gonna write you up," I'd be like, "I quit." And that's exactly what's happening. Right? That's exactly what's happening. Because they're simultaneously saying that these minimum wage jobs are like for teenagers and like they're just an entry job and all this kind of stuff, while simultaneously expecting like military level regimented health and safety concerns. No. Like, no. Like the insane paradoxes and the insane like complete total disregard for anyone's base humanity seems like baked into the system. Completely baked into the system. And it seems like the higher up the chain you go, the more psychopathic you have to be. Right? Like, I remember I had a district manager one time, right at the beginning of the pandemic, right? Where I said I wasn't going to come in right at the beginning, right? And like they had to like it was when they were rearranging things so people couldn't come into the store and it was all just pick up by the door and all that kind of stuff. And I said I wasn't going to come in because I was moving shortly to get closer to the store. And until I did that, I didn't want to come in because when I got on the transit system, there were like homeless people tented in the TTC. And her response was, "Well, the police should clean that up." Get fucked. Like, get fucked. I hate that we work for psychopaths. Like, I hate that this is a psychopathic system that rewards psychopathic behavior. That's the thing that kills me the most. That, like, we are completely ruled by psychopaths who do not care about human life. They do not care about their own children. They don't give a fuck at all. And the people who they reward are the most psychopathic amongst us. Like, there's no such thing as an empathetic district manager and empathetic. Like, it doesn't exist. They can, the best you'll get is someone who pretends. That's the best that you'll get, is someone who's figured out how to pretend to have empathy. That's the best you'll ever have. Just like the little head tilt, like, oh, liberals, right? Just fucking liberals. Like, I pretend to care. I'm not going to do anything about it. I support that. Not that I vote that way or actually do anything about it. Like, it's fucking ridiculous. What would you do if you had nothing to lose? Yeah, F around and find out. Yeah. The impact of shutting down the 401 for one day would be monumental. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's why I think that should be the end game goal. The end game goal for any legitimate... And like the PPC guys, like the guys on the right wing of it, are already talking that way. Like they know what's up. Like they know what's up. They're already talking... I won't be too surprised if the first group to do it is the right wing. Right? Because, like, these guys... Well, first of all, the right wing understands that they won't actually get punished for it because they're just white men, right? Like, so white men will get, like, a little slap on the wrist and are like, no, you shouldn't have done that, right? But, of course, if it's, like, disabled left-wing, like trans people and women and people of color, right? They'll get rounded up and it'll be like 3 years in prison, right? Like that's what'll happen to them. Guaranteed national coverage, yeah. Capitalism is kind of like Sparta and we are the helots. This is Sparta! I worry about that connection because like people really glamorize the Spartans. There's like a real like, oh, Spartans, right? People have this real like, but like that's what humans do, eh? Like think about the Spartan culture. Think about how insane the Spartan culture actually must have been. Like they were explicitly a militant, warlike people that structured their entire society in order to become the best at killing. Like that's what they did. Like, and who could have stopped them, right? Who could have stopped them from doing that? Capitalists try and foist their contradictions on me, and I'm like, no, yeah, exactly. There's no labor shortage. My 18-year-old granddaughter. Oh yeah. I mean, like that's absolutely the truth. Like it's, I've actually got It's not a labor shortage, it's a shortage of respect, fair compensation for workers. It's a response to years of exploitation by the ruling class. Like, that's one perspective. Come on. Yeah. The worker shortage is corporate PR spin for a capital strike. They're holding off on hiring in an attempt to force workers to take lower wages. They even try to enlist customers on their side with all those bullshit, sorry, we're slow, no one wants to work right now signs. I've been applying for entry-level jobs I'm perfectly qualified for, but no one ever gets back to me. The worker shortage is fake. Yep. And like, there is no labor shortage. My 18-year-old daughter has now been rejected at 5 big box stores for seasonal help. She has 2 years experience in retail. Exactly. There's no worker shortage, right? There is no worker shortage. It is all PR. Here's the scam, right? Here's the scam. These companies, think your Amazons, your Walmarts, your superstores, all these kinds of places, they want to run a skeleton crew, right? They want to run a skeleton crew. They don't want to have help. Their strategy now is the Amazon strategy of just burning people out, right? Because people who don't stick around very long, you don't need to provide raises, you don't need to provide benefits, you don't need to provide promotions, you don't need to do any of that. You just burn them out for their labor and replace them as fast as you possibly can. Just cycle through the workforce as fast as you possibly can and burn them out as fast as you possibly can. It's still a retail store though, and if you do that, right, well, the customers can turn against you, and they can turn against you, so you need to create a false narrative of a worker shortage in order to convince gullible rubes to continue shopping at your demonic establishment that abuses workers. But here's the reason why this whole model collapses and fails eventually, because eventually everybody goes into your systems and sees what you're doing and experiences what you're doing, and so they stop shopping at your establishments. Ultimately, but, if you have a monopoly share, like if you're a Walmart or an Amazon or all that kind of stuff, and nobody can go anywhere else, then it doesn't matter. You can do what you like. Because capitalism is fundamentally ruled by psychopaths who outright are trying to destroy us on purpose, right? Like it's extremely clear now. Like it's extremely clear. There is no worker shortage. This is all total bullshit. These institutions have no validity whatsoever. And yeah, we should boycott Christmas. Like, we should really, really do, like, a war on Christmas. Like, the war, a proper war on Christmas would actually be the end of this. Like, if the capitalists cannot miss Christmas, right? This psychotic holiday where we replace the time that we missed with our friends and families and our loved ones with little doodads and baubles that they'll throw away in 5 minutes is insane. Like this whole insane cycle of Christmas bullshit. Like, and we should really start looking at the people who are like, I need my presents, as just like selfish little babies. Like selfish little babies who literally need to enslave not only their own society, but societies overseas so that they can have like the newest little bebob, right? I need a new iPhone. Didn't you get an iPhone last year? But yeah, this one's a new one. It's a new one. It's got a new HR4 model. Yeah, it's got a new thing. It's better slightly, right? Or in the case of iPhones, it's slightly worse. I need it. Like, we're getting, like, fucking ridiculous at this point. Like, this pretend culture, this fake-ass culture that, like, all we are is a business with an advertising department. That's all we are. We have no culture. We're not a real society. We're just a fucking business with an advertising agency that we have deceived ourselves into believing is in any way a culture, right? And like, if you think otherwise, then you've been duped. Like, you've been fucking duped. Like, when you're walking down the street and you see, like, the poor guy playing his guitar trying to get a couple of coins from you, that's your culture. You see a homeless person actually sleeping on the side of the street while you walk to and fro from work, that's your culture, right? Your culture is the misery that people are experiencing. It has anything that's coming out of these corporations. They're shitty billboards and these stupid ads and all this kind of stuff that are designed to manipulate you, right? That's just a way to get you to buy in to this psychotic death cult that exists in the society that has the explicit aim to destroy you and itself and the fucking planet. Like, we're in, like, a big flashing red light moment now. Like, it couldn't be more obvious. And even now, there's still people like that fucking dumbass dog in the in that comic we've all seen, just sitting there while the fire is going, yo, this is fine. This is fine. Totally fucking normal. Totally normal society, right? Like, and my perspective of these people who are like, no, this is fine. This is like, no one is more deluded than those people. I consider anti-maskers to have more credibility than people who are actually walking around saying that capitalism has any credibility whatsoever, right? Any credibility, like any credibility. And I'm quite serious about that, because at least the anti-maskers are walking around saying something's gone wrong. At least they're saying that, like, I don't trust these institutions that are saying this to me, and I don't all this kind of stuff. Right? At least they're rebelling. At least they're working against it. And yeah, they're wrong about a lot of stuff, for sure. But at least they're struggling with it. At least they're attempting to find their way through this fake culture that's been doing nothing but bullshitting them. Meanwhile, the people who are standing around being like, no, capitalism's working and these people just need to work harder, right? No one is more evil, demonic, and deluded than those people. No one. There isn't anyone worse in this society. Like, Jesus Christ. Like, Jesus Christ. And I'll say it again, man. I'll say it again, as I say all the time, right? What we are experiencing today, the people who are in charge today are more terrifying than the Nazis, right? They're more terrifying than the Nazis because even the Nazis didn't attempt to destroy all human life. In my perspective, if you are going to the ballot box and being like conservative or liberal, then you're fucking voting for the Nazis. When I was growing up, everybody would be like, well, what would you have done, right? I wonder what I would have done. I wonder what you would have done. And what would people have done, during the age, like, what do you think? And all, but you know exactly what you would do if you were living under the Nazis. You would vote for the Nazis, right? Or the liberals who capitulated to the Nazis, right? That's what you'd do. That's what the majority of people are doing, right? That's what the majority of people are actually doing. Like, and if you think otherwise, you're just getting deluded at this point. Like, we need to take this all fucking over. Just like how we got rid of the fucking monarchs. Straight up, just like, no, these guys have no credibility. What credibility do these guys have to rule? What by what law do these guys have any credibility whatsoever to actually rule? Near as I can tell, the only credibility they have is the fact that they have all the guns. Like, that's it. The fact that they have all the weapons and they've got the nukes. So might makes right is the fundamental core of our culture, if you want to call it that. The world is falling apart while mainstream media continues its full 24/7 culture about Superman's son, John Kent, being gay. Yeah. Like, who cares? Like, who fucking cares? Right? Like, we're running out of road on this. Like, we're running out of road on this. Like, the main, and like, no wonder people are not paying attention to mainstream media any longer, right? Like, you're telling me that the mainstream media doesn't have anything to talk about other than like, oh, John Kent's gay. Who gives a fuck? Who cares at all? Like, who cares at all? Liberals are basically the door bouncers at the big club that you ain't in yet. Well, the attempt by the liberals is to funnel energy into the Liberal Party and have it die, right? That's the whole point. That there was an idea at one point that liberals existed to like be a release valve to like make piecemeal reform happen, but that's not how it works anymore. Now they exist so that when the people who want piecemeal reform, they go in and die there. That's what they do now, which is why things are bubbling over, because they're not actually doing their job. They're not actually being the release valve any longer. And so now so instead of acting on behalf of basic human decency or on behalf of like the socialists or the communists in order to get release valves so that they negotiate with the death cult, now they're operating on behalf of the death cult and pretending as though they're here to actually listen and do a release valve and all that kind of stuff. That's not what they exist for. The Liberal Party and the Democratic Party, ostensibly in the United States, exists to funnel progressives and funnel socialists and communists into their wings so that those people can die there. That's what they're there to do. They're not there to reform anything. They're not there to offer anything. Like, take a look at this last election, right? The Liberals called a snap election, offered nothing. Nothing. Literally nothing. Literally nothing. Right? And then we're being like, majority, please. Like, this is how out of touch and deluded these people have become. These people are delusional. Like, they're fucking delusional. And it's becoming extremely obvious. Like, and I'm sorry, if you're voting liberal, if you're voting conservative at this point, I regard you with the same contempt that I would reserve for a Nazi. Like, don't do that. Stop voting for your own destruction. Right? Like, literally don't vote. That would be better. Just don't vote. But if you ever want to trigger a message board, find a subject people are upset over and post. All this crap is happening under capitalism. Most people forget that part. Yeah, they lose their minds. That's my favorite. Like, it's gotten so childish that like people will show you a picture of capitalism and say, this is what would happen under communism. And you're literally like, but that is capitalism. Like, that is actually happening under capitalism. Like, do you ever feel nervous sitting beside a window at night with the curtain back? Maybe it's just one of my neuroticisms. Why? Are you worried that someone's going to take me out onward? You worried that I'm just going to get, like, nicked? I got to tell you, I thought about that when I first started to do this. Like, you know, the history of socialists and communists in North America is not a friendly one, right? They usually get taken out. And I started to think about that. And it really dawned on me that if somebody decided to take me out, I think that'd be the best way to go. I can't think of a better way to go, right? Like, I'm middle-aged right now. Somebody shoots me now. It means I get to avoid the whole old age hell that is obviously there. And I also get kind of martyred, right? Like, I get turned into this sort of figure, right? Cool. This place isn't that nice. Like, it's not that nice. Like, there might be a boogeyman out there. Yeah, I doubt it. I'm still too low level, man. Like, I'm still way too low level. Like, nobody knows about me, right? There's a lot of leftists out there doing this leftist thing. Although I will say, I don't know if you guys know Bay Area 415. Bay Area 415 was like instrumental in my learning about the Uyghur genocide being fake and all of that kind of stuff, and like the information that he was bringing forward. And he knew that he was under threat all the time, right? because he was wearing like a straight up balaclava with like shades and gloves, like leaned really hard into the like I'm trying to be like a secretive kind of thing. And it was for good reason. And he would do interviews and he would be very explicit. Like he had like a voice changer on too, like the whole thing. And he said like he didn't really care. It was the Spider-Man thing. He was just like, I don't really care about myself, but I have friends and I have family who I worry about, right? So I'm trying to do it for their safety. And this guy eventually gets doxxed, right? And gets hit with some death threats and all this kind of stuff. And so he knows that the fascists that he is fighting against know who he is, know where he lives, right? That kind of thing. And so he stopped operating because of it, right? And nobody knows, like, is he okay? Like, he released a tweet saying he's okay, but that was several months ago. And nobody really knows what's going on with him. No one knows if he's going to come back. Nobody knows what's going on with that guy. And so the threat is real. Like, the threat is real. Like, I could be walking down the street one day and some fucking neo-Nazi could just come out and just open fire on me. Like, that could fucking happen. For sure it could. Like, for sure it could. Especially given the shit I say about these fucking guys. Right? Like, and I mean, for God's sakes, I'm saying of the most powerful people in the country that they are psychopaths. And, like, they constantly prove that that is the case. Like, they murdered Martin Luther King. They murdered Malcolm X, right? They shot Tupac. Like, what do you think is going to protect me? Well, what, I'm white? Like, I don't think so. It's I have no illusions of what is possible, and I've already contemplated it, and I've already thought about it, and I've already decided that yeah, you know, that's fine. What a great lineage to be a part of. Is there anything better? I didn't mean anything political. Well, what are you doing then, Onward? God damn it. God damn it, Onward. Get me going on this kind of thing and you didn't even mean it. I'm not on the ground floor. Like, I'm not on the ground floor, so I'm not actually sure what it is you mean. Like, it's a nice window. I've got a beautiful view. Big uncovered windows at night make me nervous as all. Oh yeah, that's fine. Like, there's the parking lot. Like, everything's totally fine. God damn. In 1999, this house was $105K. Today, it's $490K. In 1999, teacher salary $65K. Today's teacher salary $69K. Yeah. Like, these things are getting obvious, right? Like, this right here, like, show this to your pro-capitalist buddies and be like, make it make sense. Make it make sense. Ariavian? That's a beautiful name. I don't know if I've ever seen you in here. Good to see you, though. Good to see you. Looks for laser pointer? Yeah. And they don't make small houses like this anymore either. Yeah, that's the truth. Like, I take a look at what's going on. My ex's parents live in like a kind of a suburban sort of area, and they have a little bungalow like this, which is perfect for them, right? Absolutely lovely. And they know, and they've been seeing in their neighborhood what's going on. It's like people sell their houses, and then these little houses get torn down and replaced with like McMansions, basically, right? Like, and in my view, it's just a fucking total abomination. Like, why are we doing that? What's the story? But, because, like, I would love to have, like, a little bungalow like this, right? I've been in here. Thank you. Never heard of someone describe my alias that way. Wow, it's a great name. I'm mispronouncing it all of a sudden. Aranavian? Absolutely beautiful. I know, buddy. I know. You're out of peanut butter, okay? Chill out. You're a beautiful little guy. Yes, you are, with your beautiful little face. Your beautiful, weird little face. Such a good boy. No more peanut butter, though, okay, bud? You fat little guy. Brace yourself for the nastiest Ontario election ever. Yeah, this is going to be like a drop. Like, this is going to be like an absolute throwdown. This election. I don't expect actually too much from Steve Del Duca. I think that these two have done a good job of making clear that they are both allied in the idea that Steve Del Duca should not be in the conversation. Their talking points against him are the same, right? They're making it very, very clear that Steve Del Duca, and I mean, for those of you who are unaware, Steve Del Duca was in the previous government's caucus, and the previous government gets ousted, and with such fervor that we elected this fucking lunatic, like this total fucking boob, like literally like a criminal cartel drug dealer. Like it like harkens back to the era of mob bosses. Like this is where we're at with this, and Andrea Horwath is really gonna have to like. She's really going to have to throw down. Like, she's going to have to throw down, right? I love that music, what they've chosen. Finally, right? Like, they're getting away from the piano music, right? And they're getting into that, like, more big band brass kind of thing. I really love it, actually. I'm so happy that they're getting out of the, stupid, like, dumb, like, we're the NDP, vote for us, soft little piano music. And instead they're using this like kind of bombastic music, which I rather like because it's got that kind of like dum boom 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 boom. It really makes you think, because they're using it when they're talking about like Ford or Del Duca, right? And it makes you think that these guys are stupid. So, and they are, like they fucking are. Like Steve Del Duca was part of a caucus that privatized our hydro. Like get fucked. Like get fucked. And then Doug Ford comes in and he's just a nightmare. Like, and they're right when they say brace yourself for the nastiest Ontario election ever, because A, you have like an outright psychopath here. Like this guy is a nightmare. Like his strategy is to impoverish people and then funnel them into privatized systems that he sits on the board of directors of. Like it's the most demonic shit ever. And Andrea Horwath is extremely aware that this is her last kick at the can. That if she does not become the premier of this place, she has to resign. She's got to know it. Like she's got to know it. And there is a road for her to do it, but my perspective is that the only way she's actually going to make that happen is if she throws down. She's got to fight. Like she's got to fight. And so it's gonna end up being, yeah, it is gonna end up being real nasty. And once it turns misogynist, it's gonna get real nasty. Like Doug Ford is absolutely gonna get misogynist and chauvinistic against her, right? He doesn't understand empathy or any of that, right? He doesn't have things like compassion, and no one in his caucus is gonna, like, he is gonna say some misogynist shit about Andrea Horwath. Like that's coming. Brace for it, right? And what is going to happen when he does that is there's going to be a big outcry, and then Ford will probably go up in the polls, right? If she acted the way she looks in that photo, NDP would be doing better. I think you're actually right about that. I think you're right about that, Ruth. Like, Andrea's just got to, like, kind of grow a pair, right? Like, she comes across as and this answers your question, Ariavian. How is the Ontario NDP? They still are caught in that kind of boomer mindset of what socialism is, right? And so they're very wary of coming out too strong as leftist or NDP or socialist, I should say. And honestly, I think the biggest hurdle for the NDP to overcome is the fact that Andrea Horwath sounds like a substitute kindergarten teacher. That's the biggest hurdle that they have. Like, when you look at her and when she speaks, it sounds like she talks like a substitute kid, even in the house. Like, even in the house. And it doesn't matter how fired up she is, and it doesn't matter how, like, it's just who she is, right? And so it ends up having, she ends up having this real kind of, like, condescending, like, I'm talking to simpletons sort of tone. That, I mean, she is talking to simpletons, but, like, it rubs people the wrong way. They don't want to vote for a substitute kindergarten teacher. Now, can the NDP actually win? Yes. because Andrea Horwath's entire career has been one of gaining seats where the NDP have never gained seats before. That's been her entire career. That she'll go to like Windsor and win some seats that they've never held in Windsor, and they'll have like a big celebration about that, right? So the NDP themselves are very aware that this is what's happening. But while they win seats in Windsor, they lose seats in Toronto, let's say, right? And so election by election, right? And Andrea Horwath has been the leader of the NDP for like 20 years. So she's had like 3 or 4 elections already, right? And every time it's the same story, right? They win seats over here, they lose seats over here. So the NDP power has kind of stayed stagnant this entire time under Andrea Horwath's leadership. Like in an overall sense, but it's because they keep like, it's like whack-a-mole. They're like gain here, lose here, gain here, lose here, gain here. And it's been going like this the whole time for the NDP. And so now the NDP are hoping, and the game for them now is to go to all of these places where they have won seats before under Andrea Horwath and say, now is the time for all of us to rise up together. And if they all rise up together, all at once, they can overthrow Doug Ford, right? And in a very real and significant way, like Ward, you say rural NDP is the path. Unfortunately, all of their seats are in cities, right? It is a very rural city divide that's going on. There is a very like rural mindset, city mindset divide that is happening in our politics today. And it is 100% manifesting. Like the NDP are the city crowd. The Ford people are the suburban rural crowd, like, and you're not going to get away from that. Like that's how it is. And the question is whether or not Andrea Horwath can actually convince dummies. Like I gotta call it how it is, right? Like the electorate is basically like Bob and Doug McKenzie, like like those guys. That's who's voting. Right, and Doug Ford's going to come out with some kind of scheme or some kind of slogan or some kind of shtick. Like he knows who his voters are. He knows who these guys are. Right? Why do you think he did that buck a beer thing, man? Like it worked. The buck a beer thing worked. Right? And like the NDP are just like, oh no, people aren't going to fall for those sorts of gimmicks. Like the NDP think that they're above gimmicking. Right? But Doug Ford proved beyond the shadow of a doubt that the electorate can be swayed with gimmicks. Right? Of course they can be swayed by gimmicks. Like, we're not smart. Like, we're not an intelligent people. Like, literally people were like, yeah, cheaper hydro and buck a beer. And that was it. That was his whole fucking campaign. Right? That was his whole fucking campaign. Buck a beer, lower hydro for the people, vote Doug Ford. And they did. Maybe if she changed her name to Kate Mulgrew or Captain Janeway, she would win in a landslide. I mean, people aren't really that fond of Captain Janeway in the first place, which is a shame. Can I tell you? Let's do a pivot into Star Trek talk, because what the fuck, why not? Kate Mulgrew, Captain Janeway, they wasted her talent. Like that's what it came down to. They wasted her talent. Like she is an incredibly powerful and talented actress that they got for the role of Janeway, and they completely squandered her. Like and that's such a shame. That the character of Janeway, like Janeway would have never been a captain. She would have never made it into being a captain. It just never would have been the case. Watch any episode of Voyager. Watch any episode of Voyager that you like, and you are going to see like the most indecisive, uncertain, like unaware, obtuse, like confrontational. No way that she would have become a captain. Like, just no way she would have become a captain, right? That, like, and it's such a goddamn shame because Kate Mulgrew is such a powerful actress. And I have a lot of complaints about Voyager. Like, here's a setup, right? Here's the setup. Starship crew, along with like a terrorist organization, get thrown off course and are lost at sea, essentially, right? Are just lost in space. have to make their way home, and the only way to do it is to join forces. Okay? That's the setup. Now, how interesting is the setup of half your crew are literally like space pirates, and half your crew are like trained military people, right? Like, that's fucking interesting, right? You can make your entire show about that, and the conflicts that arise from such a thing, and the difficulties that arise from such a thing. And Voyager literally had one episode where Tuvok had to like try to find a way, and they all like kind of shook hands, and that was the end of it. Like, literally a single episode about the dysfunction that arises from having half your crew be essentially pirates. And like, they just didn't capitalize on things. They just like made it lame. And all the characters in Voyager sucked too. Like, all of them, without exception. They all sucked. Like, they sucked so bad that they literally had to like introduce like a hot Borg. That was how they kind of salvaged the show. They just were like, hot Borg. Let's just get a hot Borg in there. Like, Tuvok essentially being just like, he's a Vulcan, but he's black. Like, and Harry Kim was lame. Like, he didn't have a character. And Tom Paris didn't have a character. And then like, oh, here's the half Klingon who's essentially a Klingon. Like, it just, all of the characters sucked. Like, when you think about Next Generation or Deep Space Nine and like the strength of those characters, like, all of the characters in Deep Space Nine were fucking good. The weakest character on the show was the Doctor, right? And even he was kind of interesting, right? And then like, and in Star Trek Next Generation, all the characters were great. All of them were great. Like, who was the weakest? Probably Crusher, right? Again, the Doctor, right? Probably Crusher, who's just like kind of the weakest character. The strongest character in Voyager, again, was the Doctor, right? Because he actually had an arc, right? He actually had a journey that he actually went on, right? And raised a lot of interesting questions, right? Because he was a hologram, which was just like, so that made him compelling. Whereas everybody else was just lame and didn't really have like a connection to anything. And can you tell I got a lot of opinions about Star Trek? I love Star Trek. I hope that they actually do a proper Star Trek show. Because Discovery sucks. Like, in terms of costuming and sets and all that kind of stuff, cool. Like, the way the Klingons look, super cool. But like, their storytelling sucks. Like, it's super dumb. Like, every episode is essentially just pew space shooting, right? They're not taking interesting positions. They're not defending anything, right? It literally is just like, how can we get these lasers out and start pewing, right? Like, it's just, yeah, fuck all that. What are you guys saying? As I went down on that? So yeah, if you want me to talk about Star Trek, all you got to do is mention Star Trek in the chat, guys. Those are the rules. There's a kind of rural-urban dichotomy all over the West, but especially North America. Yeah, it really is like a real North American phenomenon, and I mean, it's for obvious reasons, right? The rural life and the city life are two different lives. They're just different. Like, and what city people require is completely different. And even more than that, like, rural people and city people don't really understand each other, right? Like, why would a rural person give a shit about public transit? We drive everywhere, right? Like, why would a city person care about the price of gas? They take transit everywhere, right? Like, they're just completely different beasts. But, and because of the multi-party nature of our system, it means that, like, rural folk will vote in a person who literally kiboshes everything that the city people need. And then the city people get upset about it and then end up voting in something that the city people need, but then the rural people feel like they're being ignored. And so it's just like sweep. And there's nobody, and there's no system or institution or anybody actually saying, we need to do something to amalgamate and ensure that both the rural people and the city people are all in this together and that we move forward together. It just doesn't exist in North America because our system is confrontational. Our system is antagonistic. Every aspect of our society is antagonistic. The workers fight the owners, right? The politicians fight each other. We're in a constant internal battle. Is there any surprise at all that we're losing prestige? Is there any surprise at all that we're declining in power? Is there any, like, of course, organizations that are like erecting institutions where everybody works towards a common goal and create a plan that they actually enact and work towards are going to do better. Like, of course they are. Right? This system of competition and antagonism is gonna fail, because ultimately, nobody ends up satisfied, right? Someone comes in, attempts to enact something that people want. The other person comes in, sweep what they want away, creating bitterness and resentment, bitterness and resentment, bitterness and resentment, bitterness and resentment, and eventually there's like a literal fight in the streets. Eventually people have like a literal fight in the streets about it, because that's how the system is designed to work. Like, when I say that there's nothing credible about this system, I mean it. Like, I fucking mean it. We could structure this so much better. Like, this system could be so much better than it actually is, but we're not actually interested in that. Like, we literally elected the Liberals under Trudeau the first time under the promise of electoral reform. That they said they wanted to do electoral reform. We gave them the mandate, the majority mandate, in order to do it, and they didn't. Nobody's interested in that. Nobody in power, anyway. Ford will offer a gram of weed for all on election day. Yeah, you're probably right about that, dude. Like, I wouldn't be too surprised. Like, he's going to do some kind of gimmick, right? There's going to be a gimmick. Because Ford knows that people don't really care about, like, structural stuff or any of this kind of stuff. Like, the way I talk, like, nobody's talking that way, really. Like, he's going to just do some stupid, dumb gimmick, and people are just going to be like, oh, stupid, dumb gimmick. I love stupid, dumb gimmicks, and they're going to go for it. Right? Like, I'm going to give you a Happy Meal toy. People look in history and they say they were so dumb, yet we share the very same genes, yeah? No, but that's the truth. Like, is there a stupider time than now? Like, somebody said this, I fear we're dumber now than in the past in some ways. I think we're exactly the same. I just think now it's all televised, right? Now you can really see it, right? Like, the internet exists, like, everybody can have their say, right? There's no, like, funneling of information, right? There's no vetting. Everything is just as raw as it can be, right? What we are seeing is what humans are and always have been. We are this dumb, right? We are this dumb. That, like, we are the same people who can fall for, like, religious grifts, right? Like, these, like, people like Joel Osteen or like Pat Robinson or any of these grifters in the United States, right? Like, there's huge segments of people in the United States that legitimately believe that Jesus Christ is coming back at any moment, that, like, there are like actual angels. Like, majority of Americans still believe that angels are real, like that kind of shit. Like, we're and we've always been this way. We love magic, we love superstition, right? We love conspiracy theories. We love all of that shit. We always have, and we always will, forever and ever. Amen. Like, and there's no sign that that's gonna stop. There's no sign that that's gonna stop. I'm quite serious. Like, we had a big joke going on here, and I kind of keep bringing it up because I love the joke, which is that we could turn this channel into, like, a cult of bread, right? I'd have, like, a little bread hat and, like, a little bread scepter and, like, a bread robe and all that kind of stuff, which would all be very hilarious because I have a gluten intolerance. So people would be like, wow, you must really love bread. And I'm like, no, I have a gluten intolerance. I think that's hilarious. And I am absolutely certain that I could turn this place into a cult. And if you guys came along with me, like the crew who's in the chat, and if we all came along, I almost guarantee that this channel would do better. I almost guarantee that if I turned this into a bread cult, that the channel would grow faster, that people would really dig it. People would really dig it. Like, they would really, really go for it. Because that's who we are. We love cults. We love being part of cults. There's like 100 cults in our society. Starbucks is a fucking cult. Like, it's absolutely a cult. We love cults. Every business is attempting to be a cult, right? They want to brand you with their little icon, right? They want you to live their lifestyle. That when something happens in your life, the first thing they want you to think is, I got to tell my fellow Amazonians or my fellow Starbucksians about it, right? You got to walk around with a mug that's got a fucking brand on it. All of that stuff. You're going to live the Starbucks life. Like, every corporation and company wants to be a cult because they know that it works. It's effective, right? And like one of my seminal statements is like, the gods never died. They just rebranded themselves as brands. Like, think about something like Nike, right? Like, in ancient days of yore, the goddess Nike was the goddess of sport and victory, right? And so what would you do? Well, there was an establishment, right, that the goddess Nike would have, and have all her workers, right, working in the establishment of Nike. You would go in, you would get some kind of emblem or some kind of thing which you would exchange money for, right? You would put it on yourself to emblazon upon yourself that you are a follower of Nike, right? And you'd walk out the door and everybody would see it and they would understand that there is an acolyte and a follower of the goddess Nike, right? So what do you do today? Well, now the goddess Nike is a swoop, right? The little swoop, right? And what do? You go into an establishment, right? Where there are workers working for the corporation or the brand Nike, and you buy like a shoe or a shirt or some tote that has what on it? Well, it's got a little swoop. And so that when you're walking around, everybody can see it and be like, oh, that guy, that person there, they really felt. So it's the exact same structure. It's the exact same fucking thing. The gods are well alive and in the world today. They've just rebranded themselves as brands. That's it. And like, so we haven't evolved at all. Like, we haven't evolved at all. Like, we're the same that we were back then. It's the same thing. It's the same dumb shit, which we fall for all the time. And it's because we love it, right? It's because this stuff gives color to the world, right? We love it. Like, we love magic. We love stories. We love it. Like, we're never going to stop. The trouble has become that we have supplanted this, we've supplanted our knowledge of reality with this sort of fake bullshit, right? That dealing with reality is difficult and hard. So why bother? Let's just fucking buy some Star Wars comics. And like, Star Wars is exactly indicative of what I'm talking about. Like, Star Wars has become its own religion. It's its own little kooky cult. And it always was that way. Like, the Force, are you kidding me? And like, Jedi are space wizards. And like, so it's like, it's always been a little religion. It's always been a little kooky cult. The episode with the Phoenix was a better example of what being trapped in the Delta Quadrant should have been like. I don't think I remember that episode. I don't really, like, I rewatch Star Trek, like, fairly routinely. Like, every couple of years I go through a Star Trek rewatch. I never do it with Voyager because it's so bad. Like, it's so bad. It's not worth rewatching, right? Like, and I know people who have gone through and like rewatched it and been like, it wasn't as bad as I remember it being. And then I'm like, it's still pretty fucking bad. Still pretty fucking bad. Like, there are single episodes of Next Generation that are better than the entirety of Voyager. Like, I can't think of one episode that I would actually recommend of Voyager. I was looking through an old elementary textbook from the 1900s and was like, Schmalaz, wasn't that his name? Some guy on the internet has an opinion about Star Trek? I know, right? Yeah, Dax was great. Did you like Ezri Dax, the new Dax? My only complaint about the new Dax was that they kind of made her similar in terms of her appearance. I wish that they had gone a little bit harder on the idea that this is just like a different fucking person, you know? Like have it be a man. Have it be something completely different. Like, I kind of wish they had played more with the idea that, like, there's this symbiote. So this new person has all the memories and all this kind of stuff, but it is also a distinct person in and of themselves. But because they made the character a woman again, and then made her kind of similar looking, like they found a kind of similar looking woman, I feel like it didn't really play the way that they wanted it to. And I wish they had just made a bolder choice. And the bolder choice would have been to cast a man. Like, that's the bold. Imagine that conversation between Worf and Dax, right? Like, that's a conversation. And like, and I also think it would have given the opportunity to get into some really interesting questions and about something like, let's say, gender, right? And like these sorts of things. I understand why they didn't. I understand why they did it. Like, ultimately, the decision to even recast her was done because the actress left the show. Like, that's what actually happened. She moved on to a different show. But like, I think they could have done more with it. I think Ezri being assigned to DS9 with some real PTSD acting out, and someone should have reassigned her. It was creepy. I don't think I understand that, honestly. I don't think I understand that comment. I've been trying to show people a new system, yet no one takes the time to learn it. Yeah, I mean, what can you do, DJ, right? Like, we get stuck in our ways. Drove my significant other for her booster today, and there's a new Starbucks just opened next to the pharmacy. I was actually surprised. Yeah, Starbucks, they're everywhere. It's like an infection, right? Speaking of brands, Kellogg's union workers are on strike. Maybe avoid Kellogg projects or empty the shelves if you can afford it. Yeah, if it's a mushroom cult, I'm in. I could do like bread and mushrooms, right? I'd have like a bread hat with like a mushroom carved into the bread, right? And then instead of like bread robe, I'd have like a mushroom robe, right? And I'd have like a bread loaf scepter, like a baguette with like a mushroom on top. What do you think? Right? Bread and mushroom cult? Right? I love this idea, man. It's so fucking stupid. I love it. Bread and mushrooms, yeah. I know this is the norm in America, but getting home at 6 p.m. and having 2 to 3 hours to yourself every night is the craziest shit ever. Yeah. Like, this flows in very much to like normalization, right? Normalization is something that doesn't get talked about. How like things can just become normal even if they're fucking insane. That like this is just how things are done, right? And like a culture can just get swept up in a hysteria, right? And in like a war hysteria. Like what happened after 9/11 was a hysteria. I don't hear people talk about it this way. I've never heard anybody actually talk about it this way, but to me it's so obvious. Like while I was experiencing it, while I was living in the culture, looking around at my fellow people, I was like, we are in a hysteria. Like this is a war hysteria. We are pounding the drums of war. We are on the path of vengeance. And like when Bush took us to fucking war in Iraq and Afghanistan, it was literally like they didn't even need to lie. Like the WMD lie, they didn't have to do that. They didn't need to do any of that. Like they could have very easily just been like, we're going to go to war with Iraq and Afghanistan. If anybody had stood up and said like, wait, what do they have to do with 9/11? They could have just said, shut the fuck up. And that would have been the end of the conversation, right? They didn't need to lie. They could have literally just been like, shut the fuck up. We're going to war. Fuck you. What, do you hate America? And that would have been fucking it, right? People would have been like, oh, I don't hate America. I'll just sit down, right? Like, what's interesting about that hysteria and that journey to the war in Iraq and Afghanistan is the fact that they felt like they needed to lie about it at all. Just fucking don't. Literally just say, like, fuck you. We're going to war. Shut the fuck up. Love it or leave it. Like, all that kind of shit. Like, just George Bush could have been sitting there being like, we're going to go to war, and if you don't support us, then you're with the terrorists. That's all he needed to say. He didn't need to lie. He didn't need to do anything. He literally just could have been like, Saddam Hussein's got to go down. We're going to go in there and fuck him up. What are you going to do? Stop us? Ha! That's it. Like, I'm to this day, I'm a little bit like, why bother with the lie? Like, the more I investigate that idea and the more I think about that, the more I really think that the lie was manufactured for just the people on the inside. that there was enough resistance to the idea of going to war in Iraq and Afghanistan internally that they had to create this lie in order to get those insiders on side in order to do it. Like, think about like people like Colin Powell, for example, right? Like the whether it's true or not, but the mythology surrounding Colin Powell is that he himself was deceived, right? And I think it is because like he didn't necessarily want to go to this war, especially a war based on false premises. So they had to manufacture this lie to deceive people like him, right? I think the American public, if Bush and Cheney had just been like, we're going to war with Iraq and Afghanistan, the people would have been like, yeah, and that would have been it. And anybody who stood up and been like, why? People would have been like, shut up! Because we were caught up in a hysteria, right? Like, think about the Salem witch trials. The Salem witch trials were a fucking hysteria, dude. Like, people going on witch hunts and trying to, like, get witches out of their society and all this crazy shit. And you can see it in the documents. Like, you can see it. That after all was said and done, lots and lots of people who were caught up in the hysteria started to talk about it that way. That they were just like, man, we just got caught up in that, eh? Like, that got real out of hand. And those sorts of hysterias happen to cultures all the fucking time. All the fucking time. Just like crazes take over. And in retrospect, you look and try to analyze what caused it. But in many cases, it's just like, that's just how it is. Just we want to go crazy. We want to go nuts. And what's going to happen when a hysteria like that sweeps through the nation right now? Right? Like you think about, and a lot of the anti-mask stuff is this hysteria. Right? That in retrospect, I feel like a lot of these people are going to be like, why didn't I just get the vax? Like, why didn't I just get the vax? Right? But you're caught up and you're swept up in this hysteria. Developers in Florida have begun building the world's first pandemic-ready skyscraper. The Legacy Tower will feature bacteria-killing robots, touchless technology, and modern air purification systems. Fuck, dude, does that ever sound like the setup for some sort of like horror film? Right? Doesn't that sound like the setup for some horror film? Like you're caught in this like robotic skyscraper that has like fritzed out or is doing something horrible, and there's like some like that somehow the bacteria actually infuses with the robots, and so now you've got these robots going around trying to kill everybody because they think that humans are the bacteria. Like that's what's going on. Like that's what that sounds like. That sounds like a Stephen King novel right there, dude. Like touchless technology, so like that can like sense motion, and so all these guys, like you've got a scene where everybody's got to just like stay completely put. Well, like a scanner comes through and it's all very tense, and one guy like sneezes and like gets sliced in half. Modern air purification systems, so like that, but we're the bacteria now, so they like fill everything, so everybody's walking around with like masks and shit, so that they can actually filter out the air, right? Like it's this, yeah. The Legacy Tower, and that could be the fucking title of the piece, right? The Legacy Tower, right? And the real message of the whole piece is that this is the legacy of mankind, to build structures that ultimately turn on them. Which is what we've done, right? Which is what we've done. I need to sit down and actually write some of this shit, you know? Like, this is how my brain works. Like, here's my problem. And I know that it's my problem, and so I like to talk about it. My problem is that I'm really good at creating concepts. Like, I'm really good at coming up with, like, ideas and seeing things in different and new and abstract ways. But I'm not that good at actually sitting down and hammering it out and actually writing it down, right? And getting it like onto the page or any of that kind of stuff. Because what I really like is the idea. I really like the idea and the sort of picture of it. And then when I'm like hammering it down, by the time I get about halfway through, like I'm not really interested in it anymore. And instead of just like digging through and just being like, I'm going to shit it out, and just get it done. Instead of that, I just move on. Because by then, there's a new idea. And because I know this about myself now, I never even bother starting the thing. Because I know that by the time I actually sit down and like do it, I'm actually going to have moved on to something else. And so, but now I'm living a different kind of life, right? Right now, it's like the live stream is really what I've got. And then like the capitalist thing is like on the fringes more. And I'm starting to think maybe I could get back into the writing stuff. And an idea like this, like the Legacy Tower with the like bacteria killing robots and all that kind of shit, like that could be a lot of fun. That could be like a nice like short story. That'd be a good way to get back into it. Yeah. I think about that. Like I'm actually finally getting a family doctor soon, I hope. And that's one of the things I'm going to talk to them about. It's like, hey, can I do some tests for ADHD? Can I do some tests for that? I think I might have some AD. I might have a little pinch of ADHD. Like I might just have a little pinch of it, And if I could take some drugs to make it so that I could actually sit down and finish a project, that'd be really, really nice. That's why music is so good for me, right? Because it's more like when the idea comes or when the thing comes, I can just like quickly like write out a thing. It doesn't take like a song to write out a song, to actually write it out doesn't take that long. It's kind of waiting for the idea to come that takes the time and waiting for the thing to happen. And I never know when it's going to happen, right? So I always have to have like paper, pen, and the guitar kind of at the ready because they just sort of come and go. And but in the end, like you end up with like something nice that as you play it more and more, right, it grows and changes and then kind of settles in, which is different than writing. Writing is a different sort of thing. Anyway. Who's to say that communicating ideas isn't your gift? Yeah, I mean, inspiration has to come from somewhere, and maybe it's you, from each according to their ability. I mean, it would be nice if it worked that way. Like, I know for a fact that if I had like a writing, like if I was the head writer of like a writing team, that writing team would spit out some of the best shit ever because my ideas are tight. I have awesome ideas, right? And I also have that gift of like one person is over here with an idea and another person's over here with an idea, and I can connect those two ideas. Like that's there was something that when I was very, very young, I read an Einstein quote that said his definition of genius was being the first person to connect two ideas that had never been connected. And ever since then, I think I was 12 when I first saw it. So ever since then, I've always attempted to do that. I've always tried to be like, and I'm not trying to say I'm a genius. I'm not trying to be like, I'm a genius. Like, no. But just ever since, from a very young age, I've always been like, oh, there's this idea and this idea. Can I connect them? There's this and this. Can I connect them? How do I connect these two things? And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, obviously, as things do. And sometimes it can get you into trouble because you can start to get a little bit conspiracy minded about a lot of things, right? Which is why I think it's so important to have like documentation and sources, because I know this about myself. And now I've been doing that for so long, for like 20 years now, like 15 years now. I've been actively doing that now I just kind of do that. I'm just like, oh, there's an idea. How do I get them together? This is how, let's go. And cool shit happens. Sometimes some really cool ideas happen, and sometimes some cool things happen, and sometimes I create things that people don't get because there's so much groundwork. Like that's a big problem. Like you gotta like. There's a difference between like having the completed idea, but you gotta really get people to it. Anyway. Well, I really love your stream. It's been really value to me. Isn't that nice of you to say, Bumbleguppy? Isn't that nice of you to say? Oh man. That really touched my heart right now, Bumbleguppy. I gotta tell you. Guys, when I started this stream, I was feeling really angry and really upset. I feel so much better right now. That's what a beautiful thing you just said. The Legacy Tower needs a crane on top that kidnaps people to work as janitors. That's hilarious. Just literally like it comes down and sucks people up. Capitalism 1970. Work hard. You too can be rich. Capitalism 1990. Work hard and a few crumbs will fall down. Capitalism 2021. You should be willing to die in order to save the economy for the top percent. Yep. Like, oh, I wonder why kids are turning away from capitalism. And could it be that there's like literally nothing for us? Like there's literally nothing for us here. Like this as far, like if you're under the age of 20, there is nothing here for you. Like it is a barren, empty wasteland. You are never gonna own anything. You're never gonna have anything. It's highly unlikely that you will even have children. Like the system has turned what should be a wonderful, highly advanced society into just a total barren wasteland. Like, and it's just because we're a society of middlemen and salesmen. Like that's it. Like there's no such thing as craftsmanship anymore. There's no such thing as any of that. Like everything gets distilled into its most mass producible. That's it. Like it doesn't matter what you make. As you mass produce it, you're going to reduce its quality, because that's how you make money, right? Yet landlords will take a third of someone's income and then say shit like, people just need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Yeah. And a third of someone's income, wow. Man, I would love it if landlords were only taking a third of my income. Like, yeah, geez, if a landlord was only taking a third of my income, I'd be doing a lot better, I think. Like, landlords are taking like 70% of my income right now. Like, like, Jesus. Yeah, the same people who claim that socialism kills millions are willing to let millions die to preserve capitalism. I do love this one. Am I lazy or am I breaking my capitalistic addiction to productivity? And like, I love this idea, like productivity. Like, productivity is when Galen Weston gets rich, right? But like, when you actually look at the action that you're actually doing, it's quite harmful. And that's essentially the truth across the board. Like, there are exceptions. Like, if you're like a farmer, you're growing food for people to eat, right? Like that is useful. That is useful. Like, period. But like, if you're the worthless middleman that has inserted yourself between the farmer and the person who needs to eat, like what productivity are you producing? Like, what are you actually creating of any value? Yeah, landlords need to get a real job. Abso-fucking-lutely, dude. Abso-fucking-lutely. When people claim that the fulfillment of basic needs for all would destroy the incentive to work, they are admitting the entire capitalist system is based in coercion. That is a form of slavery. Work for us or starve. Labor can never be voluntary in any such system. That's from the Hampton Institute. The Hampton Institute is just like laying it out, dude. Like the Hampton Institute for a couple of years now has, like, their tweets have just been like completely laying out that we live in a wage slave system, that what we are experiencing is one step up from chattel slavery, but it is still slavery. Like, and given what we had to do to get rid of chattel slavery, like, what we are going to have to do to get rid of wage slavery is going to be of a similar tenor. I am very concerned about. I'm very concerned that is the case, especially in a place like America. Like, America resolves its conflicts through war. That's what America does. Like, but now we've got nuclear bombs in the mix, right? Like, think about the destructive nature of the Civil War, and now think about the type of weaponry we have now. Like, the Civil War was fought without tanks. The Civil War was fought without aerial bombardment. The Civil War was fought without missiles and robotics and, like, robot dogs and shit like this. The new Civil War is going to be fucking gruesome. It's going to be grisly. And it's already kicking off. Yeah, no war but class war, and we didn't start it. Absolutely, that's the case. Like, the class war starts with the seizing of the means of production from the monarchical class by the merchant class throughout Europe. That the merchants eventually gained enough power to be able to purchase, in many cases it was purchasing, the means of production from the knights and the lords and the kings and the princes who didn't really care, right? Like, they didn't really have the ambition for empire building or domination anymore, or the prestige or the ability to do it. And so the merchant class ends up with the means of production, and they end up with the land that the serfs are living on. And the previous arrangement, like serfdom, the arrangement under serfdom was that the parcel of land that the serfs were on, the serfs were actually a part of that land, right? That was the understanding. So unlike slavery, where it was a 1-to-1, where like I own the slave, right? Well, it transferred so that no, you can own the piece of land, but the serfs come with the land, right? That you don't directly own the serfs, you own the land that the serfs are upon. And for many of the serfs, actually, this is fine, right? Because they just live their life on the land and they produce, right? And of course, you have abusive relationships and you have abusive lords and all this kind of stuff. That absolutely does occur. But it's certainly a step up from slavery. Like, it's certainly a step up from slavery. And so what do the capitalists do, right? The merchants, like, what do they do when they get the land? Well, they drive the serfs off the land into factories and erect a wage slave system. So instead of the serfs just living on the land and like producing grain and then shipping a certain amount of grain off to the lord, and then they have the grain for themselves, and there's like a little economy amongst the serfs themselves, all of that gets obliterated and exchanged for this wage slave system. The women and children get funneled into factory work and mines, right? They put children down mine shafts and shit like this. And the men who are able to go to war are conscripted in order to do war. They clear cut all of England. They clear cut all of Europe, create battle cruisers and battleships, go down to the African continent, create a slave, literally slavery. They rebuild slavery with black slaves, take them over to to the New World, right, to North America, commit a genocide against the First Nations people. Like, who started this? Wasn't us. We were happily just like plowing fields. We were happily just growing grain and shit. Like, he re-elected George W. Bush. Now he wants Democrats to elect him. Matthew Dowd, Bush's speechwriter, now running for governor as Democrat. Of course he is. Yeah. The rehabilitation of George W. Bush. You guys wait until they do a rehabilitation of Donald Trump. You wait. Like, they'll do it. Like, these guys have no moral compass. Like, they've got no actual soul. Yeah, they're not even trying to pretend. Like, because there isn't. Like, there isn't. Like, there isn't. They both work for the same people. They work on the same team. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. All American politics is vanity now. All American politics is just vanity. It's just a vanity project, right? That to be elected as a governor or a congressperson or a senator or even the president of the United States is just a personal vanity project. It's just a way for you to say, I did it, right? I got elected. I convinced a bunch of people to vote for me instead of somebody else, right? Has nothing to do with helping anybody, has nothing to do with creating a better system, has nothing to do with any of that, right? Barely has anything to do with managing the empire anymore, right? Like, it literally is just a personal vanity project. That is what American politics has become, if it wasn't always that way. That the personal vanity of Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is the guy that made it obvious, right? Like, Donald Trump doesn't give a shit about governing or ruling or signing laws or anything like that. He doesn't care about any of that. It's just a vanity project for him, right? And it was the same way for Obama, and it was the same way for Biden, and it's the same way for George W. Bush, right? Like, it's the same way for all of these guys, right? They just want to be the president. Like, they're not interested in actually doing anything or helping anybody. Okay, buddy, have a chew on that, man. Come on, you're being a little fussbutt. You're being a little fussbutt. Give that a little chew, okay? There's lots to chew on. Give it a little chew. What a good boy. Well, and this is something I'm continuously trying to convince people of, right? Like AOC and Bernie Sanders and all of those guys, right? It's the same story for them as well. It's a personal vanity project. And their character, Bernie Sanders' character, was the socialist, right? That he found a group, he galvanized enough people towards this idea of socialism because he was standing up saying he was a democratic socialist. And that's his character. He's the socialist. And whether he believes it or not is almost completely irrelevant and besides the point. He's never going to get power. Like, they'll never allow people to actually vote for somebody serious, right? And Bernie Sanders has essentially capitulated on that point. Like, he knows. He understands. Like, he understands. Why do you think he's working with the Democrats? Why do you think he doesn't rebel against them? Why do you think he didn't do anything? Why do you think he's walking around saying, oh, my good friend Biden, right? He essentially capitulates the election to Biden, right? Even though more and more information comes out, we see that they did to him what they did to him when he won against Hillary Clinton, right? But he's not walking around saying, they stole the election from me, right? Which they did. Like, Bernie Sanders beat Hillary Clinton in the primary. Like, he did. That's just explicitly the truth. And he doesn't talk about it or complain about it or any of that kind of stuff because he knows what the system is. He understands, right? And he understands that, like, he is pursuing a personal vanity project for himself, right? And when he gets into these positions, they exist only for his personal prestige, right? He's aware of that. And AOC is not different, right? Like, AOC, like, maybe she's less aware that ultimately everything she does is just for her own personal glory, but it explicitly is. There is no such thing as an American political system. It doesn't exist. It's just for show. It's just it's no different than the WWE, right? That, like, Hulk Hogan comes out and the Undertaker come out and they both, like, shit on each other and they're like, oh, we're gonna fight, and then they actually, like, have a fight and everybody cheers and picks a side and gets really, like, about it, right? And then whatever outcome happens, and most of the time it's like somebody comes in with a chair and there's, like, a complication or something to, like, so that it's not wrapped up a little bow so the story can keep going and all this kind of stuff, right? And then all parties involved go back behind closed doors where the audience isn't seeing them and they all shake hands and congratulate each other for a job well done and they all get paid by the same guy, right? Vince McMahon pays all those guys. They all follow the script written by Vince fucking McMahon, right? And if they didn't, Vince would fire them. Like they did to Ralph Nader. Like they did to Dennis Kucinich. Right? Like, it's this other... Yeah, people get confused when I crap on Biden. They think I'm a Trump supporter, and then they do the same thing to him, and they can't process it. Everyone wants a hero to save them. I've been saying this all along, right? Creating this sort of savior complex in the society and maintaining it is very important. It's important to get people through periods of distress, like Donald Trump or Biden's abandonment, or honestly someone like Clinton, right? Like Clinton, who destroyed and dismantled the welfare system. Create desperate people who have a savior complex. Hey, thanks, buddy. And who has the most savior complex in the society? Oh, it's the guys walking around saying that Jesus Christ is coming back at any moment, right? Like, that's a literal savior complex. That, like, Jesus Christ is coming back and there's going to be a rapture and all this kind of stuff. So this savior complex is built into the society. And what's scary about that is that if you have a culture that has a savior complex, then you can deliver one, right? Like Obama was, right? Like Obama 100% was our savior. Hope and change, a black man. Oh, America's changing. Isn't it so great? And then he ended up just being a surrogate for Wall Street, the military-industrial complex, the Obamacare, his big like shining jewel that everyone was losing their mind over, was essentially created by Mitt fucking Romney, right? The entire rest of the developed world is looking at it being like, what the fuck is this abomination? I wouldn't tolerate that, right? Like they're celebrating because they got like, oh, we got a million extra people, a small amount of medical coverage. Like it's literally fucking nothing. Obama squanders 2 years. Like when Obama came in, he had the presidency, he had the he had the White House, he had the Congress, he had the Senate, right? That was and in like super majority levels. They could have passed any legislation they want. And what did Obama do? What did Obama do at that time? We need to reach across the aisle. We need to make sure that our Republican brothers are on side with us. And they just wasted a whole bunch. And they filmed it. They filmed Obama talking to Republicans. They filmed Obama reaching across the aisle and trying to create consensus and all that kind of stuff. We can't just move forward with legislation without our Republican brethren. And Americans were just like scooping that up. They were just like, yeah, we need to consensus and all that kind of stuff. Literally, he could have pushed through any legislation he wanted. The hero's journey is capitalist propaganda. I'm going to say yes and no to that. I see where you're coming from. You got to remember, what's my background? Theater. So, the buddy, there's no more peanut butter, okay? We're done with this subject. This goes away now. You're finished, okay? You're finished. Chew on this, for God's sakes. I bought you this thing so that you can chew on it, and you're not chewing on it, and I can't figure out why, because I know you love that shit. The hero's journey is a literature theory that gets utilized explicitly by fascists. Fascists do utilize the hero's journey and politicize the hero's journey, because the formula of the hero's journey, or the idea of the hero's journey, seems embedded in every story. That if your story doesn't really follow the hero's journey formula, and I mean, let's really get explicit, okay? The hero's journey. This is it, right? Call to adventure. So like Frodo, right? Frodo gets a call to adventure, supernatural aid, right? Gandalf. The threshold, right? The beginning of the transformation. So that would be when he agrees to take the ring to Mordor, right? So he's got the call to adventure with supernatural aid. He agrees to take the ring to Mordor, right? Helper, Samwise Gamgee, mentor Gandalf himself, or Aragorn, if you prefer. Challenges and temptations, right? We can think of any of those sorts of things, right? Plenty of orcs, right? Gollum. You'll see down here a new helper, Gollum, right? The abyss, death and rebirth, the transformation, atonement, return, and then he goes back from whence he came. This is the hero's journey. There are Dan Harmon recently, Rick and Morty, has explicitly stated that he will not let a script go past him if it doesn't follow this formula, right? He explicitly demands that this is the case, right? And it's got that kind of circular way about it. And almost every story that you have seen follows this formula, right? Star Wars, and that's why the new Star Wars movies suck, because they deviate from the hero's journey, right? That you can see the corporate guys getting caught up in their own stupidity with this shit, and it really can sometimes be extremely simple, right? And mundane in a way. But what's interesting is about telling mundane stories is that as long as they follow this circle. And you can see this. Watch an episode of SpongeBob SquarePants. Most of them will follow this, right? Because there's something intrinsic about it. There's something we like about it. There's something we love about it as humans. And most good stories follow this format. So what happens, though, is once this starts to apply to politics, right? Well, and it doesn't have to work out, right? All that matters is that the protagonist returns from whence they came and somehow something has changed. Like, that's it, right? Like, it doesn't matter if it quote unquote works out. And Dan Harmon is actually an expert of this particular point. That all that matters is that Rick and Morty end up from where they came back and are somehow changed, even if it's kind of fucked up. He's actually a true master of that. And so what happens in politics, specifically with fascists, right, is that they take the story of the hero's journey and they tell you that you are in the midst of the hero's journey, right? That they layer the hero's journey and they convince you that what you are seeing from your eyes is actually a movie, and that you are living your movie, that you are filming with your brain, called Your Life the Movie, right? And they convince you that you are on this heroic kind of a journey to glory and all of this. The Nazis were very good at this. The Nazis were extremely good at doing this. And they convince a person that they're living in their own glory and that there's going to be some kind of great sort of thing, which in my view is actually a misunderstanding of the hero's journey. Because as we said before, with Onward Dystopia pointed out, all that matters is that the hero and the hero is the protagonist, returns from where they came. It doesn't matter if they actually attained that glory or if they actually did any of that kind of stuff. All that matters is that they come back from whence they came, somehow changed, right? And so the Nazis do a really good job of co-opting this, convincing each soldier that they're on this journey, and then abandoning them fundamentally, right? It's because ultimately the hero's journey is a storytelling device. It's not a way to live your life, right? It's not a way to run a society. It's a storytelling device, one that we seem to really love. We really love to see the cycle of all of this. And the hero's journey applies both to tragedy and victory. It applies to romance, and it applies to comedy, right? So you can tell everybody that they're on a hero's journey and people will generally believe that, and it'll be a great, wonderful, off to Valhalla sort of thing. But it could also be a tragedy, right? It could also be a tragedy. And the story doesn't care if you end up coming back where you started in a box or not, right? I come across some philosophy YouTube channels sometimes who are appealing to people in that way. There was one about how you need to be heroic and willing to take risks. Obviously, this was about taking off your mask and living with COVID. It wasn't about defunding the police living dangerously. It wasn't about how our cities have turned into bland playgrounds where there's no danger or anything interesting whatsoever anymore. Yeah, isn't that the fucking truth, dude? There's nothing interesting, really, in these cities anymore outside of the people and how they're fucking acting. Our culture only recognizes the journey of the singular hero, not the group. Yeah, get a job, it's your adventure, go fight, win. Exactly, yeah, exactly. Well, and that plays into the individualization of the culture, right? How we're supposed to view each and every, I'm supposed to be my own individual, and I'm not supposed to be concerned about the needs or what's going on with my neighbors at all. I'm supposed to just literally be separate and believe that I am on my own hero's journey and they're on their own hero's journey. And if we can agree that that's the case, then we don't need to ever intersect with one another, right? Because if you're the hero, then you can't be the helper, right? If you're the hero, you can't be the helper or even the mentor because you're the hero, right? Other people are supposed to be helping and mentoring you, right? You can't just fall out of that. And as you get older, you see, especially as you get older, you see how fraudulent this is to believe that your life operates this way. Again, the hero's journey is a storytelling device. It's a device. It's a tool used by storytellers in order to tell effective stories. And it becomes a delusion once you start to believe that your life is a story, right? Because to follow the hero's journey, you've got to believe that your life is a story. And your life isn't a story. Your life isn't a story, right? Who are you telling it to? Well, if you think about your life as a story, then you're only telling it to yourself, right? And I can't think of a more delusional way to think about yourself. To not think about yourself as a person or a human connected to a larger system in a universe, right? Or any of that kind of stuff. But to think of your life as a story. So you're like literally lying to yourself as you're living your own life. Like it's a very sad way to live your life. And the capitalist system wants you to do it, right? Because if you can believe that your life is a story, then they can tell you that, oh, well, the challenges you're facing are just part of the story, right? That's just something to you just need to stand up straight with your shoulders back or bootstrap yourself over this challenge, face the hurdle, and then you'll get the rebirth and all the glory and all that kind of stuff. Life is a story only after the fact. Writing the story isn't the story. Well, and honestly, like, again, like as somebody who's like really studied this, like it's a tool. The hero's journey is a tool, right? It's just a method to write effective stories. It literally has nothing to do with your life. It literally has nothing. Like, if you want to use it as a way to sort of romanticize your life and all that kind of stuff, you can, and people do, right? But like, it doesn't have anything to do with what life actually is. Right? It would be like telling me that like an augur, you're supposed to live your life like an augur. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, life has its ups and downs like an augur does. It's just like, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. I'm not gonna live my life like an augur, right? Like I feel very similarly to the hero's journey. It's a tool that craftsmen use in order to create a product. Right? Or if not a product, then like an end thing. Like they have a story, right, that they can tell, and it'd be like convincing yourself that it'd be like convincing yourself that like money is real, right? Like I feel like that's actually a pretty tight analogy. Like convince yourself that money is real, and you can do all kinds of fucking stupid things. Convince yourself that your life is a story, right? And you're on the hero's journey, then all kinds of stupid fucking things will happen, right? Because both of those things are just tools that don't actually exist in order to facilitate some kind of thing in the society that's actually quite ephemeral. It's actually quite, that is itself non-existent, right? Like the hero's journey doesn't exist. It's not like an object. And money isn't real. Like, it's not like an object, right? Like, but if you convince yourself it is, then all kinds of wacky shit's gonna happen, right? Like, you can fight a fucking world war over this shit. Like, I think about World War II all the time, especially recently. Like, especially with this, like, looming threat of the Americans bombing China and all this kind of crazy shit. And I'm like, imagine literally like going like, because Europe fought World War I, right? Like imagine fighting World War I and experiencing the absolute shit show horror tale that World War I was. Because World War I was like the first industrialized technological war. And it was a horror story. Right? It was like the Gatling gun, artillery shells, aerial bombardments, like trench warfare. Like they created hell. And then like a decade later they thought to themselves, yeah, let's do it again. Holy fuck. Like holy fuck. Brutal. Oof. I can't imagine even being part of a culture that would do that to itself. Democracy requires that alternative visions of society be placed before the people, from which they can choose. But if all political parties have the same policies, namely those approved by capital, then the choice of the people becomes meaningless. Utsa and Prabat Patnaik. Yeah, that's absolutely the truth, right? Like that's why there is no democracy in the United States, because the Democrats and the Republicans are allies. They agree. People expected World War I to be heroic like past wars. Yeah, like as if the past wars themselves were even heroic, right? Like you can see, like, just pay attention to the people who are really into sports, like especially like the soccer hooligans, right? The soccer hooligans, and you really get a sense of like what war would have actually been like the amount of like chutzpah and like all of that kind of crazy shit. But it was full of guns that killed dozens of men at once and soldiers living in mud-filled pits for months. Yeah. Well, and the advent of the Gatling gun, right? And this moment in human history, I really love thinking about. I mean, it's horrible. Like, it's a horrible thing to think about. But the transition from warfare being essentially like single shot muskets, right? Single shot muskets and bayonet charges and like lines of men, right? Which is what warfare was for like thousands of years. Line your men up, have them come at each other, right? You've got various forms of like artillery fire, bows and arrows, the longbow, crossbows, like, and then muskets, and then transitioning from that, the idea of like forming lines and facing one another, and then introducing the Gatling gun into this, and not to mention rifling and like automatic rifles, right? That like we have the journals of generals at that time who literally were saying, just send more men at it. It can't possibly kill them all. Yes, it can. Like, yes, it can. And so in response to that, then you end up with trench warfare, which then ends up with like barbed wire, because they can't get through the barbed wire without getting gunned down by this Gatling gun. And the biggest change, in my view, was that like warfare used to be fought like people would march to the fight location, and everybody kind of knew where the fight was going to take place. Everybody would march to the fight location, right? You'd have a conflict. The conflict itself would last a day or two, right? They'd fight, right? There would be declared a winner. And usually, like, it would be over a parcel of land or something, and then usually that parcel of land just gets ransomed back. And so in the end, like, the end result of all of this is that some king or lord or whoever was responsible for organizing this ends up with a bag of gold from the other guy who loses the bag of gold, right? So it's literally just like sportsmanship with the highest possible stakes for the people who are actually fighting. But now with the advent of the Gatling gun in World War I, instead of the conflict going like, we're here, fight over, now you're like digging trenches. Now there's like, to gain even an inch of ground takes a month, right? You need supply chains. You need to actually, like, you're investing so much capital into just getting this parcel of land. And then the land itself is completely destroyed, right? People have to like flee the territory. It's like a literal hellscape. So that when you get the land, fuck no, you're not giving it back. There's no such thing as ransoming it back. I'm not going to do that. That's my land now. You don't like it? Come get it. Right? We fought 6 months for this little parcel of land. We're not just going to give it back. Like, that to me was the biggest change. That in the idea that like, well, no, yeah, sure, we came in and took that land, but it's traditional French land, and so we'll just ransom it back, right? Like, that disappeared. That if you go in and you take that land, that's your land now. Like, that's a big shift in the way people thought warfare should be. we don't have soccer hooligans here. I mean, come on, dude. We got football nuts. Like, you take a look at the guy wearing the cheese head, right? Come on, you know what I'm talking about, the cheese head guy. I forget what Green Bay Packers. You got people wearing like fucking things and like going shirtless and all that kind of stuff with the goddamn like cheese head and all that stupid shit. Yeah, for sure we've got hooligans here, dude. They're just like. Yeah, they're not like soccer hooligans. I'll give you that. The soccer hooligans they're on another level. But like, it makes sense that soccer would be as popular as it is. Anyone can play it. It's easy to learn, right? Like, American football is actually quite difficult. For like, first of all, the equipment, and then also the rules are odd. Like when you watch a game of soccer, it's pretty straightforward what's happening, right? Kick ball in net. Like, pretty easy. But when you watch a game of, like, American football, you're like, why are they stopping? Like, what's going on? Like, it's a bit inscrutable. My grandpa got gassed in World War I. Shit. Yeah, suffered lung damage the rest of his days. That's and the gassing is one of those things that, like, I'm very surprised that as much gas was used in World War I. Because, like, you don't control that gas. Like, that's the big reason why most people have actually adhered to the most kind of free gassing sort of stuff, is because once you release gas, you don't control it. It can fuck your own people up pretty bad. My grandfather was in Guadalcanal and was the few anti-war people in my family. He also gave up a lot of his racist belief towards the end of his life, which was a surprise to everyone. Well. See? It's never too late. It's never too late. Leafs fans. Yeah, Leafs fans. Yeah, you see them all over the place, man. Like, our football nuts don't run around beating people up and whatever hooligans do. Well, I mean, anytime, like, the Canucks make it to the playoffs, right? Like, win or lose, there's, like, looting and shit that happens in Vancouver. Like, that happens. Like, I don't know, Onward. I feel like you might have some blind spots on this one, dude. Like, I feel like the hooliganry that happens, especially when it comes to, like, hockey and stuff, like, those guys are here. Like, they're here. Yeah, football is designed to squeeze in as many commercials as possible. It does seem to be the case, yeah. American football, the players beat each other up, so there's no needs for fans to. Oh, yeah, okay. I'll buy that. I'll buy that for $1. So this comes from Ben Garrison, and Ben Garrison is kind of a nut, but he does kind of he does nail this on the head. The March of Tyranny. The global elite bankers with the pyramid, the classic pyramid, shouting through the mainstream media, left, right, left, right. Democrats kicking a dude. Next time I'll vote Republican. Republicans stomping on a dude. Oh, next time I'll vote Democrat. Blind spots on sports? Me? Football? Is that the game where they have the ball in the field? Yeah, you nailed it, dude. That's football. Yeah, the one with the ball in the field. Yeah, you know. Yeah, RoboCop. RoboCop is a great film, guys. I highly recommend everybody go and take another run at RoboCop. The first one especially, as it does, right? It starts to water down as the sequels go on. But like, RoboCop was a real predictive. Like, it really predicted a lot of things about what American culture was going to be like, and what and how the corporations, like the director of RoboCop really understood that private capital was going to privatize military services, and also work with gangs and work with disreputable elements in the society for their benefit. Like, he really understood he really understood, like, the downfall of American society. He called the outright downfall of Detroit, like the outright, like, just like, yeah, in the future Detroit's just going to be like a hollowed out former manufacturing center that doesn't really produce anything anymore. It's like, yeah, nailed it, right? Nailed it. While also simultaneously also simultaneously really understanding that the rulers of the society will be so depraved that to take a destroyed police officer and turn him into a robot will not be outside of the conversation. Like, I take a look at one of these fucking robot dogs, and if somebody said to some of these psychopaths, like, yeah, if you put a human brain inside of one of those robot dogs, it would be highly efficient. They'd be like, well, where can we get some human brains? Right? Like, they absolutely would do that kind of shit. And the journey of RoboCop, the journey of the protagonist into reclaiming his humanity is actually very beautiful. It's a very beautiful story. And I'm going to do something right now. Okay? People watch RoboCop and they take for granted what that actor was actually doing, because it's the perfect illusion, right? That he's moving and there's this mechanical sound, right? But watch RoboCop and understand that everything that's happening on screen and everything you're seeing is him. That he's doing all of that, right? And really respect and understand the illusion that he's creating, right? And like, here, hold on. Before I do that, I'm going to do this because I want to. Here, let me turn this light on. Milo, you stay put, buddy. Oh, come on. There we go. So this guy, right? I forget his name, but the actor, right? Like, he's outright just walking around like this, right? This is what he's doing. And he stops, turns his head, right? Does all this kind of stuff. This is what he's up to, right? And he does this the whole time he's on set. And everybody's just looking at him like, when in reality, it's a dude, right? Inside of a metal suit, right? It's just a guy who's just like, right? You gotta love it. You gotta appreciate that there's an actor out there who really commits and really understands that, like, oh, like, I've got to be a robot. I've got to act in this way. And it is actually one of the greatest physical performances that has been put to film. I don't think there's been a more impressive physical performance since. Like, really watch RoboCop. Turn, like, if you got to turn the sound off, right, and really just get it into your mind that is an actor. That is just a man in a suit, right? And you will and let it dawn on you that this guy is putting on this performance and really bask in his physicality and what he physically does. And my respect for that actor, I'm totally blanking on his name all of a sudden. It's driving me fucking crazy. The actor that played RoboCop. Peter Weller. I don't know. Jim Carrey in The Mask was pretty good. Fuck you. I've seen this one that you're talking about, by the way. Ben Garrison Marks. Yeah, I've seen this one recently. Oh, that's not the one I was thinking of. Here, maybe if I just go to images. Yeah, this one. For sure, right? For sure. Yeah, I'm just gonna get the fuck out of here. Gotta love it. Well, what's interesting about Ben Garrison is, like, his perspective is interesting. I'll put it that way. Jim Carrey, what really made Jim Carrey's career was the elasticity of his face. That he really leaned into the elasticity of his face. That his physicality was never really that interesting or renowned. But he was able to be like a living cartoon, you know? The Jim Carrey, like you think about Ace Ventura, The Mask is a great example. But it's all his face. It's just face. And his physicality was never that impressive because he wasn't really doing anything that could be considered highly acrobatic. Like I think about people like Buster Keaton or Charlie Chaplin, right? Those guys are like acrobats and real physical actors. Like really, really amazing stuff comes out of them. Whereas Jim Carrey's physicality was always just like sight gags. He never really did anything that was that impressively physical, but it really is the nature of his face as a living cartoon. And I actually wish that Jim Carrey hadn't got caught in the Oscar shit. That was the thing that really hurt Jim Carrey, I think. That Jim Carrey would have been a more interesting actor if he had just accepted who he was and what he was bringing to the table, which is that he was a living cartoon character, right? But then he starts doing like Oscar bait is what I call it. Oscar bait. He just convinces himself that he needs to get an Oscar, and he convinces himself that the money isn't enough, right? The fame isn't enough. He also needs to get the accolades from his peers. And they were never going to give that to him. Like, come on, dude. The guy was bending over, talking from his ass. Like, not to mention that Ace Ventura was essentially a transphobic film, right? Like, let's be really straight about Ace Ventura. Like, the punchline of the film is that the villain is trans, right? Like, that's the punchline of the film, and it makes it like it makes Ace Ventura kind of unwatchable. Right? Like I recently went back and watched Ace Ventura and was just like, oh shit, like yikes. Like I remember when I was a kid, everybody loved Ace Ventura. Ace Ventura Pet Detective was like the shit. And like to realize that we were all basically basking and glorifying like transphobia, right? Like that's what it was. Yeah, Jim Carrey seemed to have an existential crisis a couple of years ago. I never know how real that is with celebrities. Like, I mean, you got to think about a guy like Jim Carrey, right? Like, who like attained the level of fame and the heights that he actually did. But like, what was it for, really? Like, what was it actually all for? You know, I feel like a lot of people think that way. And Carrey has made a couple of statements. His statement on depression, I actually think is worth hearing because he said that depression is when your avatar is tired of maintaining itself. When the person you're pretending to be is tired of being there. And I think there's something to that. There's something to that, I think. And I do think I articulate depression to be more like your body is attempting to articulate something to you. And I think probably what Carrey has experienced in himself is that he pretends to be people he isn't, and that gets quite exhausting. But like we always kind of knew that about Jim Carrey, right? Like who is the real Jim Carrey? You don't know. Does he? And I mean, for God's sakes, you watch. There's a documentary called Man on the Moon, or Of Man on the Moon, where he plays Andy Kaufman, where he like pretends to be Andy Kaufman even off screen. He just maintains the character. That's a pretty wacky thing to do, dude. Like that's a pretty wacky thing to do. Like Jim Carrey's a very strange person. He's a very, very strange person who has his own shit going on. And anyway. Howdy, comrades. Had another good time at fencing. Hope you all are enjoying yourself as civilization collapses around us. You know, Duke, it's good to know that as the civilization's going down, you're out there learning fencing. And should it come to it, I know I'll stand behind you and you'll on guard people away. Yeah, oh look, Grimes is reading Marx. Yeah, exactly. It's such fucking bullshit. Who was that silent film pratfall comedian with the straw hat? I mean, a lot of people do, like, pratfalls were actually taught. All of them could do pratfalls. With the straw hat, you might be talking about Buster Keaton. Here, let's just take a look at Buster Keaton. You tell me. Buster Keaton is one of the greats. That's not... There we go. Buster Keaton's one of the greats, man. Like, he's right up there with Charlie Chaplin. He's one of the great vaudevillians. If you don't know Buster Keaton, I really, 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 really recommend going and having a dive in some Buster Keaton stuff. Like, Keaton was a genius. And the physical gag where, like, the side of a house falls down and the protagonist is standing there as the house falls down and he falls through the window, right? We all know that sight gag. Buster Keaton invented that gag. That was him. And he was renowned for only wanting to do one take. He would come on set and he'd have an idea for something and he would shoot it once, and if it worked, it worked, and if it didn't, he'd just move on, right? He really, really was a big believer that, like, we're not going to do multiple takes of stuff to get it right. And so that put a lot of onus on him to have the rehearsals done and have everything in place so that they would shoot it once. And if it worked, it worked. If it didn't, he'd just move on. And when he did the house gag, right, it was literally dropping the side of a house, like an actual side of a house. It wasn't styrofoam or anything, because he wanted the weight of it, right? It was literally the house falling down. And he was working with an engineer who said, like, okay, that's your spot. And as the story goes, the engineer is just, like, sweating away because for all they know, they're about to watch Buster Keaton die, right? Like, Buster Keaton walks in as the house is falling. Buster Keaton walks in, finds his spot, and boom, the window, he goes through the window of the house as it hits on him. Could have easily died, right? And what happens to Buster Keaton is that there's this movie where he is going down a series of steps, like, really big. Like, he's jumping, like, a story. Like, he's jumping down things. Like, forget about, like, health and safety shit, right? Like, they didn't care about any of that shit. Keaton didn't care. And he was just jumping down. And there was one moment where he went to jump down, and because he's doing it one after the other, he slips as it's going, and he lands right on his neck, right? And he pops up and continues with the shot, right? And then they keep going, all this kind of stuff. And then years later, Keaton is like, man, what's going on? And they finally get him in and they do some x-rays and all this kind of stuff. And they find out that, yeah, dude, you fucking broke your neck. And he's like, yeah, that probably was when I fell on my neck that one time. And they're like, yeah, dude, you fucking broke your neck then. Kept doing the shots, didn't even think about it, right? Like, Buster Keaton, one of the great ballers of cinema. Right up there with Charlie Chaplin, without a doubt. The problem with Buster Keaton is that he wasn't his life outside of cinema wasn't very interesting, you know? Like, he was just sort of a normal guy, more or less. And because of that, nobody really cares to make a documentary or anything out of him, because it literally is just a documentary of, like, he grew up a vaudevillian, had a fairly stable home life, shot a bunch of films, married, everybody kind of liked him. He died of cancer, credits roll. You know? Like, there isn't really much drama there. Yeah, Buster Keaton, man. Buster Keaton. Did we do it? Did we nail it? Is this the guy? Anyway. Yeah, but I did it. It's fantastic. Yeah, the whole method acting is always really unsettling to me. There is a whole school of acting that says of method acting that only amateurs use method acting. Right? That, like, if it's not really acting. And I think that that's actually true. Like, I've gone in for acting training. I've gone through, like, here in Toronto, I've talked to lots of actors and worked with lots of actors. And, like, most people are of the opinion that method acting is for amateurs. Like, it's not really acting. Like, if you have to become the character, then you're not acting, right? Like, it's like, there's this great story where, who's the guy who did Lawrence of Arabia? Lawrence of Arabia, actor. This guy. Is it Peter O'Toole? Peter O'Toole, yeah. So Peter O'Toole is working with Dustin Hoffman on a project, and the script calls for Dustin Hoffman's character to stay up all night. He's been up all night. And so Dustin Hoffman decides, well, I'm just going to stay up all night then. And so that when we do the scene, I will have actually stayed up all night. And so I'll be really in the moment, right? That's like a really method actor kind of thing to do. And when Peter O'Toole finds out that Dustin Hoffman has done this, he just sits down next to him and he looks at him and he goes, Dustin, it's called acting. Verbal sitcom comedy. It is totally worn out, dude. There's this whole phenomenon online now, and it happened. It's the Big Bang Theory, where they take sitcoms, the Big Bang Theory being the big one that they do, and they just remove the laughter, right? And when they do that, you really see how terrible it is. Like most of the time, it's really, really fucking bad. Like you're sitting there and they do the line with the response, right? Yeah, exactly as you're saying. Statement, questioning response, punchline, canned laughter. But like the writing is so fucking stupid and so fucking bad. And when you do that, especially to a show like Big Bang Theory, you really see how misogynist these characters are. And you really see how cringy a lot of what they're saying actually is. And you're also seeing how often on this show, The Big Bang Theory, the punchline is that they're just nerds, right? Like the punchline is like Star Wars, ha 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 ha, right? Like and oftentimes they don't actually have a punchline. That the punchline is just how peculiar these guys are. And once you accept that, like, you know, once you understand that they're just nerds, and once you accept that, and that's not weird or funny to you, then the whole thing loses steam, right? Like, the only reason The Big Bang Theory became popular at all is because it was kind of the first show to really embrace the nerd culture, and there were enough nerds to be like, oh, it's a show about me, right? Reminds me of rewatching Seinfeld recently when they say some really racist or homophobic remark and the laugh track just goes nuts and you sit there being uncomfortable. Yeah. Yeah. Comedy is interesting that way, man. Like, comedy is the first thing that wears out. Like, it's the first thing that really stops being effective, like, very quickly, and it does happen really fast. Like, I remember I did a rewatch of Disney's Aladdin, the Robin Williams version, or as I like to call it, the only version. And a lot of the genie's humor, like a lot of what Robin Williams is bringing to the table, relies on cultural references. Right? And I didn't really realize that when I was like a kid, and even when I rewatched it in my like late 20s. But now I rewatch it, I'm like, oh yeah, like there's a whole generation of people who have no idea who any of these people are, right? Like, so the genie turns into like Jack Nicholson even, and it's like starting to talk like Jack Nicholson. It's like, yeah, if I'm a 16-year-old kid, I'm gonna have no idea who this is, or what he's even referring to, right? And it's just littered with it, and so it doesn't. It just doesn't hold up. And it happens so quickly. Which is a shame because, I mean, the genie is one of these iconic, like, Robin Williams only character, right? That's why shows are not as good when the oldies people were in the audience and actually laughed. Yeah. I see what you're saying there, Ruth. Like, that's why, like, people were actually in the audience and if they laughed, and if they didn't, they didn't. Right? Like, the whole canned laughter thing. Sorry, guys. My dog is finally chewing this. Oh! Okay, buddy. Can you not chew it against this thing? Because you're shaking the camera. I can't live with it. Why have people been losing it so much about Chappelle's most recent bit? It's not even offensive compared to umpteen other bits. Can I be really straight with you, Scourge God, on this one, right? And I know that as I'm going to talk about this, I'm wading into the weeds. I had a conversation even yesterday about this, and I could tell that there were people in the chat that were getting uncomfortable with my position on it. I think the thing that people are most offended about exactly, here we go, about Dave Chappelle's newest special is that he's really attempting to articulate something that has yet to be articulated, and it's up to debate whether or not he even managed to successfully articulate it or critique the situation. And I think what's making people the most uncomfortable about it is that he clearly went into this conversation not to tell jokes about it. I think that's what makes people the most uncomfortable, is that he really has gone into this conversation with the genuine interest of trying to find a way to amalgamate these two things. Yeah, he flat out called himself a TERF. Yep, you're absolutely right on this. And here's my position on Chappelle. I'm just going to state it, and then we can all move from there, okay? I admire his struggle, right? Like, he doesn't need to do this. He doesn't need to do this. He doesn't need to wade into these weeds. He doesn't need to. He never needed to, right? He could have just walked away from it completely. Like, completely. He could have literally just done another special, picked a bunch of other subjects, and walked away from the subject completely. He did not need to talk about this subject at all. But I think there's something in here that he is struggling with himself, right? He is struggling with his own perception. He is struggling with his own opinions and his own position. And I also think that he sees that people are saying you can't talk about this. And if you say you can't talk about this to a man like Dave Chappelle, he's going to talk about it, right? Like the very fact that they're saying I can't talk about this is inspiration for him to talk about it. And what I believe that we are witnessing is a man who is struggling with a subject, and why I admire that so much is that our society has not given much room to people to actually openly struggle with this concept without heavy demonization, right? And because of my background, because of my own background, I used to be a fundamentalist Christian. I used to argue that homosexuals were evil, that being gay was an affront to God. I lost friends over it, certainly. I look back on that time as and the friends I lost and the people I knew. I don't want to use the word regret, but certainly there are good people who are not in my life because of it, and my own growth away from that, and that struggle that I went through in order to come to a place where I finally said my upbringing was wrong, my family was wrong, my church was wrong, my schooling was wrong, to realize that, like, oh, it's okay to be gay, like all of this kind of stuff. And in fact, the struggle with that is a big, like, that wedge was a big reason I eventually abandoned fundamentalist evangelicalism. Because if it's wrong about that, what else is it wrong about? Turns out a lot of stuff it's wrong about. And so I see someone like Dave Chappelle really taking this head on when he doesn't have to, because he feels that he's attempting to articulate something that he sees as not being articulated in the society. And he's attempting to, and he says it several times, that he's attempting to find a way to unify. Like, he wants us all to laugh together, right? He wants us all to laugh together. And of course, like, I actually do view, like, Chappelle makes fun of black people. He makes fun of, pick a race, pick a sexual orientation. He makes fun of it, and so now here's this one group, trans people, who he is including in that, right? And I think fundamentally the question that Chappelle is confronting is why are these people supposed to be excluded instead of included? Like, and that's the difficulty, I think, that people have with Chappelle, is that he views himself as being inclusionary by making fun of trans people, because he makes fun of all of these groups. He views himself as normalizing that group and bringing them into the wider conversation, right? And I think also there's the other element that trans people are used to, when someone is making fun of them, it is an attack, and they're used to that. It's completely, yes, exactly. Yeah, you're touching on it here, Amanda. That's exactly right. Have the highest stats for hate crimes. He forgot about Marsha. Yep. And this is how the trans community is interpreting this. That because they're so used to any kind of mockery or derision or even commenting on their existence at all, without it being like a full upswell of total support, right? That the trans community is so used to mockery being used as a tool to oppress them and go after them, that even jokes meant not to facilitate that in their mind, and perhaps actually, like I'm not the expert of any of this, have that result, right? And it was pointed out by Hassan. Hassan said that, like, yeah, immediately figures like Ben Shapiro, figures like David Crowder have grabbed hold of what Chappelle are saying and are using this in their own work as ammunition against the trans community. And it won't be much longer until the real transphobes and like the real people are going to come out of the woodwork and use what Dave Chappelle is saying as ammunition against the trans community. And that path, like that path of Dave Chappelle said this either in jest or as a way to try to make a bridge or as a way to articulate his own internal thoughts, is being taken and used as actual ammunition to continue the oppression of a highly oppressed group. Chappelle doesn't see that. He doesn't see that. And he doesn't want to admit that is kind of what that is what is happening. I was about to say kind of what happening, but it is explicitly what is happening. And so it's an unfortunate and frustrating situation, because I do believe that Dave Chappelle is struggling with an issue he doesn't understand and is being told that he's not allowed to, which only makes him want to do it more. And he doesn't necessarily understand the fallout of that is literally like a far-right bigot killing a trans person while saying the things that that Chappelle has said. He doesn't see that path, right? And nor do I ever think he would. And of course, I think he would decry that. He would absolutely decry that. That if some far-right Nazi said the words that Dave Chappelle said and used them as a way to destroy a trans person, I think Chappelle would feel that would be a great tragedy. But it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Right? And I don't like to wade too far into the weeds on the opinions of the comedy or anything like that, because it's such a complex conversation. It is a very complex conversation. Like there's a lot of complexity because like the issue of accepting the existence of trans people in the first place really raises a lot of like when it was easy for straight people to accept, or easier I should say, I shouldn't say easy, but easier for straight people to accept the existence of lesbians and gay people. because that doesn't actually raise the question of what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? That you can sort of land on the place of saying like, oh, okay, like you're a guy, like you're a man, but you just like having sex with other men. Oh, okay, right? That doesn't confront the issue of what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? Right? And Chappelle's answer when he says I'm Team Turf, right? What he is saying is well, we are all born by a woman. And so he's kind of making the statement that, well, the ability to give birth to children makes you a woman. And it's like, is that really the thing that makes you a woman? Like, is that really the thing that makes you a woman? And it sets me to thinking and pondering, is this what makes me a man? Is it strictly my genitalia that makes me a man? Is what is a man? What is it to be a man? Right? And these are enormous questions. These are enormous questions that are not going to be answered by a comedian, right? And but in the end, I do have to, like, how do we have this conversation? How do we have these conversations in our society, right? How is it that, like, how can we openly talk about our own experiences with encountering trans people? I don't think falling into silence, rather. I don't think falling into silence is good. And how do we ask silly questions, and how do we get into this? And my hope with someone like Dave Chappelle's work is, and I'm going to be straight up. I'm going to be really, really honest right now and really make myself vulnerable when I say this. I have found Dave Chappelle's work, with the exclusion of this last, with the exclusion of this last one, The Closer, which I think was a whole different thing. I think that was more his own dealing with it. But Dave Chappelle's work and his questioning and asking and probing the trans experience has really actually helped me with my own journey. That seeing someone else struggle with the question and seeing somebody else struggle with that has actually helped me with my own journey in that, and with the trans people who are in my own life, and how I approach them and how I talk to them. And ultimately, I do think that, like, we shouldn't be using Dave Chappelle as an authority, certainly. Like, trans people should be the authority of the trans experience, like, without a doubt. This is why I'm so heavily critical of Joe Rogan, right? Joe Rogan platforms transphobes pretty regularly, like people who are against the trans community pretty regularly, and he doesn't platform trans people or trans activists, right? That's the critique I give to Joe Rogan, and why I'm happy to say that Joe Rogan is an outright transphobe, right? That's exactly something a transphobe would do. And ultimately, you have to listen to trans people, and you have to believe what they're saying is the truth, and believe that they're experiencing the human experience, which is something that Dave Chappelle himself articulates. And I don't know that he actually understands that, like, what it is to be a TERF. I don't think he quite gets it, you know? I gotta be straight. Like, I don't think he quite gets what that is. Like, full on. Like, I straight up think that, like, he doesn't understand what that is. I'm just gonna put that out there completely. Like, to me, it is falling onto that, like as he said, like, to me, it's, he said, yeah, if you're, gender is a fact because we're all born by women, and so women, a woman is, and that is, a woman is defined by her ability to give birth to children, which it's really weird, because that's a very strong statement to make about both women and trans people, of which he is part of neither, right? But in the end, and I think I land on this, and I've been over time on this just specifically to clear this, because I'm also struggling with my own opinion and position on this. I think the two things I walk away with are: trans people are the authority on what it is to be trans, and we need to listen to trans people, believe trans people, and respect trans people. And it doesn't matter if you understand the trans experience. All that matters is that the trans experience is real, and it's part of the human condition, and it reveals that being a human and human sexuality and gender are far more complicated than we thought. That the universe is capable of producing this type of person, and we all are coming to terms with it, and what that means, and how do we do that, right? And what's most important is that we listen to trans people, we don't demonize them, and we take advantage of this crack in our society, this little crack in our society where we've stopped beating the shit out of trans people, and we keep widening that crack. And the way to do that is to talk to trans people, platform trans people, listen to trans people, and believe trans people. Outright, without a doubt. Simultaneously, second statement, I think Dave Chappelle is trying to do exactly that he is struggling with this concept himself, that he is struggling with this idea, that he is working within his artistic medium in order to do that, that he is, but ultimately he is not the authority. And I think that is the thing that I think really is why people are so kind of up in arms, is because people are attributing to him that which he is not, which is an authority. In no way is he an authority on these issues. He is, at best, a straight black man struggling with what it is, with the very concept of what it is to be a trans person in the first place. And he's doing it in an extremely public medium and in an extremely public way, which makes it far more difficult and far more absurd. I think, would I call Dave Chappelle a transphobe? That's a tough one. Because of the nature of the medium that he works in, and because of the nature of his work, right? Would I call him a racist? Right? He says lots of racist shit. And again, I just, because of like the nature of what it is to be trans, Dave Chappelle's obvious struggle with that nature, and my own experience of struggling with the nature of human sexuality as well, I have to come out the other side and think, like, we have to be wary about the negative outcomes, the Ben Shapiros and the Steven Crowders, while simultaneously allowing room for these kinds of conversations to occur. And if I were to fault Chappelle with anything, it would be that he seems unaware or willing to accept that there are bad actors who want to hurt trans people who he has just given a lot of ammunition to. And that's really the truth. Like, so you can see how there's lots of things in play, and there's lots of difficulties within the conversation. And at the end, like, Chappelle's intention almost doesn't matter, right? Because once it's out in the world, it becomes its own beast. And my concern with Chappelle's work is, even if he did everything as a way to try to make peace and as a way to find amalgamation, I am very concerned that people will take his work and use it as ammunition. Okay, guys, you can hear the pug. I gotta go rescue him. I'm way over time. So I gotta go. Just remember, each and every one of you is a divine being, standing in divine energy. Good luck. We're gonna need it.